We are back on 25 LSO 0229, which is the Imagination Library. And we're up to that point where I would say to the committee, what's your pleasure on the bill?
Move the bill.
Okay, been moved by Senator Rothfuss, seconded by, we'll give it to Berger, Representative Berger, to move the bill. So I guess I would start out by saying that the constitutionality of the bill is in question, probably not in question, probably is not constitutional, but there's a couple ways we can handle it. We can either ignore that and move forward, or we can put a Band-Aid on it that probably isn't quite kosher, but we've already done that with S's, so. What's the pleasure of the
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this one, unlike the previous one, I think there's plenty of room in the title if we choose to do it in session. We could do that relatively easily. The other one, we needed something that wasn't just an appropriation to have that license in session. So, Mr. Chairman, what's your thinking? My thinking is we could fix it in part fairly easily.
Okay, if you have a suggestion.
I think there may be a suggestion down here.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say almost the exact same thing, and I also think that the discussion between collaboration versus contracting actually muddies the waters even further. So I think it's probably a good idea to go through the process and figure this one out, but changing that one word in session is not going to be the end or, me all break all on this particular bill, so.
Okay, do you have an amendment? Would you like an amendment? Would you like to just pass the bill and we'll let it work out in session?
We need an appropriation number.
We have to have an appropriation number. So on page 6, line 7, we need to put a number in that. 7.4? 720?
Yes.
It was 3.
It was, well, it depends, 1 year or 2 years.
Yeah.
I think we only need 1 year.
Start with 1 year?
Yeah, half of that.
Okay, so 300, I think, was the first year.
Yeah, 300.
Okay,
Is that an amendment?
yeah, Mr. Chairman, sure, I'll move to amend page 6, line 7, from the unspecified appropriation to $320,000.
Second. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That has passed. Okay, any other amendments? If not, we'll proceed to vote on the bill. Please call the roll.
I make some just discussion on it since I was
Okay,
somewhat called out on it. Mr. Chairman, we get heat for voting against bills like these all the time. They're feel-good bills. How can you vote against children? How can you be against reading? All that stuff. But, at the end of the day, we make policy here that lasts a long time. We have to make sure it's a good policy argument to implement this policy. And, I thought it was a great infomercial what we sat through about the great things that Dolly's doing with this charity. And, at times it feels like we're on the Shark Tank TV show, right? People coming to us, pitching us ideas for different business opportunities. And, but we're not venture capitalists. We're not philanthropists. We're not, a panel of donors. We're legislators, and we make policy, and we do what's best for the state. We follow the Constitution. And so, you can disagree on policy and still love children. I still love my kids, and I still want them to read. But I just don't think as a policy, this is the right thing to do for the state of Wyoming. And with that, Sharks, I'm out.
Chairman, the subject matter of this bill is one that's near and dear to our hearts in terms of reading. And I've been skeptical of a number of the preschool type initiatives in the reading area as to whether we're getting them done right or not. This one, it seems to me, is one that is effective and will reach a number of the families where, for economic reasons, the parents have not had books in the home. And I think it will be, for the price, a pretty effective intervention. So I guess I'm going to be an eye on the bill, even though I don't like spending the more money and don't like expanding in general what we're doing in education. But in this case, I think this may be a cost-effective way to get some improvement. And I could be wrong. If I am and it doesn't work out, we all know how to cut a budget.
Further comments? Go ahead. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Co-Chairman Scott that we know that this is a priority and how important early education is, early reading. We know beyond a shadow of doubt that reading to your kids when they're young moves you in the literacy direction. That just flat out is true. I think everyone agrees with that. And this is a path that provides an opportunity for many kids that would not have that opportunity, do not have books in their homes, do not have parents that without this type of program would take the time or have the available resources to read to their kid and provide that opportunity. So while sure, it would be great if this would just take place without the government, that would be the ideal, is if this had already happened and we were just having a presentation on how successful it was. That's a better presentation. I wish that had taken place. But the reality is that isn't the way it is. And so it needs resources available. This is effectively a 2-to-1 plus match where the state provides an investment, a foundation provides an investment, and a community provides an investment that will then provide literacy resources to ensure that parents do have the opportunity to be reading to their kids and engaging in that early formative education. So from my perspective, even though I agree with Senator Beitman on a lot of what he said, in terms of wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to do it this way? I just feel like we do have to do it this way based on observing where we are now and the fact that we do have a lot of shortcomings that need to be overcome. I'm confident that this is going to help, and we certainly can and should revisit this later, and we have some reporting requirements in here to see whether it's working or not. So I'm hopeful that this is effective and moves us towards that goal of having all of our kids reading effectively.
Obermuller first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm skeptical that we know more about what families and parents need in their budgets than they do. Just from personal experience, when we were first married and had small kids, we had books in our home, but we didn't have much money. But we didn't have four-wheelers, we didn't have boats, we didn't have RVs, we didn't go on vacations. So at some point, parents have to prioritize reading to their kids. And this is this big, broad brush, we're going to give books to everybody. You know who's going to take advantage of it are people that don't need the financial support, but already understand the importance of reading, and people that have assets, know where to maximize their resources and their sources of revenue and money. And one of them is if you want to give something free, they're going to be the ones that do that. So unless, without being convinced that there's a level of what the actual nature of that population is, that doesn't have, that absolutely has their priority straight, that they're not wasting money on other things, and that they absolutely, absent every other toy, cannot prioritize books because they're at that economic level. And that's who we're trying to capture here, right? And so I just don't feel like this is where, if there's anything that looks like a private solution to me, and I think everybody knows here that I believe that government has a role, but if there's one thing, this one strikes me that it has all the characteristics of a personal solution. And if there are families to identify out there that are so poor that even they're at the very basic level of one book a month is out of their reach, somehow there's a private solution to that. So I just can't vote for this bill. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Chairman. Carly Provenza, please, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to address my good friend's comments. I really would like to resist the stereotype that poor people are irresponsible with their money. I think that's an egregious misrepresentation. And at the end of the day, what we should be doing is what's best for kids. If their parents, by some aspect, made some financial decision that doesn't make sense to Representative Overmuller, fine, but they still deserve a book. I really just, I have a lot of respect for Representative Overmuller, but I think it's very problematic to make assumptions that people are irresponsible with their money and they're choosing to spend their money somewhere else. Even if that's true, don't those kids deserve a book? And if it's not true, and you're wrong, what about those kids? So, this interim, we have voted down pre-K. We have voted down real solutions for hardworking Wyoming families. And we have voted down mental health for children. And this is our opportunity to do something this interim that's pro-family, that is pro-children, and is pro-teacher, as we heard. And I think it's rich that during some of our testimony, we have a child in the room with a book. I really would like to see more children in more committee rooms with books.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Senator Office said. I think it'd be remiss if we didn't recognize at this point that there has been a major private sector effort in this area. In my community, we've got the Wyoming Reads program put together by, as I remember, a local banker, and has been very effective. And we've, I think, proved that the private charity is going to meet the whole need. But if we didn't have it, the appropriation here would be a lot larger. It'd have to be. So I think we ought to recognize that there has been a major private effort and it has made a big difference. And we should compliment the people who do that and hope they continue, because it is important.
All right, anybody else? Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate everybody's comments. And literacy is very important to me and my family. And we didn't begin literacy at day one. We began, I read to my children when they were in the womb. That's when I started. I had that role, and that's when it begins. And I had good help from and parent training from that. And from my experiences through the University of Wyoming and through the lab school and through Albany County School District number 1, and how do what could you do for your children is read to them, and don't start at day 1 at birth. Start at conception. Start there. Read to them in the womb, because that's where you get used to doing this. Get in the habit of that. Get in the habit of being that kind of a parent. And where we have to have more training, with our faith-based or with our education groups that train our parents. We need your help as educators and as legislators to help. We're all in this together to educate these kids. And we know how important literacy is. So important. You've heard it from educators, you've heard it from myself, and it is very important. So this is a great thing. It's another tool for parents and another tool for children to use. And I think it's a great thing. And this isn't the end. Literacy, this is not the end. This is just the beginning of getting better with literacy. Thanks.
Twenty-five LSO 0229.
Mr. Chairman, on 25 LSO 229, Wyoming Imagination Library Program, as amended. Senator Beitman? No. Senator Brennan? Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz is excused. Representative Allred?
Aye.
Representative Andrew?
No.
Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Clouston is excused. Representative Lawley?
Aye.
Representative Obermuller?
No.
Representative Provenza?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Scott?
Aye.
Chairman Northrup?
Aye.
I have 7 ayes, 8 ayes, sorry.
Yes.
4 noes and 2 excused.
Very good, thank you. Okay, well, we're back up to item number 5 on our agenda, or I'm sorry, item number 4 on the agenda, which is the consolidation of the CTE grants. And as everybody might remember, or may not remember, that was our subject, one of the subjects we had in the previous meeting, and Representative Lawley and I met with the CTE people and had a pretty good discussion on Zoom about it, at which I'm going to turn it over to Representative Lawley and let her talk about that discussion. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on 25 LSO 0098, which was in your packet, draft 1.0, if you'll recall, the last meeting, we were kind of wrestling over this idea of combining 2 grants under one kind of program. And so what we did is take a look at this and try to see how it would practically work. You can see a lot of staff comments, as you'll recall from the last meeting, about combining them. And so what are we combining? Well, there was a CTE demonstration project grant that was created several years ago. And it is a grant that's specifically for kind of standing up new CTE programs. If a district wants to try it, get some grant money to see if they can make it go, if there's sufficient interest and things like that. So that's what that grant was. The second grant is a new grant that just passed in our 2023 general session for equipment and supplies for existing CTE programs. So what happened is we kind of tried to work the process, is it became clear that combining the 2 of them under one statute was a little bit problematic if the legislature wanted to kind of, I would say, retain their original intent, that these be clearly distinct grants with different purposes and different requirements. So as a matter of policy, what we're recommending is we don't do that from the work group, that we basically lay this bill aside and try to look at a different way to address some of the issues the department had about possible confusion, dates and things. The one grant from 2023 is really just now being noticed and explained to districts and things like that. So we haven't really had a fair shot at even seeing where there might be some of the most important places we might need to cure or make better. But our view was we could do that a better way than trying to take these 2 very distinct things and kind of, for lack of a better word, cram into another statute, and it would be very confusing if we wanted to retain the distinction between the 2 grants. And that was a kind of a threshold policy decision that we felt was what the legislature created these 2 for distinctly. They have different purposes. So we're recommending you lay 0098 aside, that we do that, and then we are going to have in a minute potential small correction that would help a little bit, but we'll look at maybe even as personal bills if needed, if we need to do a little bit more, but kind of tinker with the two to help a few things, but we're not use this approach. So again, we're just, our recommendation from the work group is that 0098 is laid aside and we just save ourselves that problem.
Thank you. And so to the end of that, when we got done talking with the CTE people, they said, well, there's a bill on your desk that's 365, 25 LSO 0365. And that bill was one of the bills that was before us in the last couple of years. Has some money in it that the districts can get for technical education equipment. And it turned out that $50,000 is not enough. If you've ever had to buy steel, for example, or anything like that, that it turns into more money, oxygen, cutting torches, all the other things that happen. So the request was to bump that up to $75,000, and that's on page 2 of that bill, line 4 and 5. And then the next part of it, down on line 23 on page 2, was that there was a look-back period in it that said, we're gonna look back and see if you spent that money within the last 5 years. Well, some districts haven't caught on to what's going on. We decided that it'd be better for districts just in the quick, short term to just look at a shorter period. And so we changed that to 2-year look-back period. And then the last part was on page 3, line 4, further has been stricken and preference has been capitalized. And that's the changes on that bill. And that's what came from the CTE group. Questions from the committee? It'd be my preference that this turn into a committee bill. If not, there's a lot of people that would like to take it on the floor, but. So I guess I'll ask right off the bat. We probably have a motion to make this a committee bill.
So moved.
Do we want to discuss it first?
We're gonna do it after we get this little technicality done. Yep. Yep, in a minute. So we got it moved and seconded to make this committee bill. Any discussion on it? If not, go ahead, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was this, I'm looking at our materials. I just am trying to get clarification. Did we see the consolidation from the 98 bill? Have we posted this publicly?
It has not been posted publicly. I brought it.
Okay.
There's copies available if anybody wants to look at it.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I think it is so close to the other one that we had announced that we're gonna have. I think we're well within, having given everybody notice we were working in this area. I don't think there's a problem.
Any other questions? We will as soon as we make it a committee bill.
No, we gotta have the public comment.
Can you
You wanna-
call it a committee bill draft? That make me
Okay, that'll work. Okay, so let's vote on whether or not this is gonna be a committee bill draft,
Okay,
and then we'll have public comment on the bill.
okay, we're not
No,
gonna,
it just turns it into a committee bill draft.
okay.
You didn't
I don't think
necessarily.
we need that stuff.
I'm gonna go down that road, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so now I will ask if anybody on the committee has any questions on the bill. None appearing, we'll move to public comment.
Do we need to have a motion to lay this? We can do it. If you want, we can do that. Mr. Chairman, you can open this up.
It is, we're at public comment, yes.
That takes an hour comment.
We could do that.
Are we starting with the department first or public comment?
All of it above. The department gets precedence, so
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I thought I better run up here quick before you changed your mind. I just wanted Wanda Maloney with the Department of Education.
Good afternoon. Jennifer Lahiff with the Department of Education.
We just wanted to share that the superintendent is in support and thanks you for considering the CTE topic for consideration, also looking at the consolidation, but also moving forward any type of amendments. She believes in efficiencies, and so looking at how we can better serve our constituents, how can we support districts to be able to have the funds that they need to be able to run their programs, and then also supports accountability in terms of having a look back so that districts would have to, in terms, look at their funding. Lastly, would you say that in terms of communication, the department is willing to recognize that we have 2 separate grants and that we'll do our best to continue to communicate out the different uses in those in a side-by-side format so that districts have a clear understanding of how to utilize the funds to meet their needs. And then I would just lastly say that we have partnered with the Wyoming Association of Career and Technical Education to further look at what would be the best needs for our districts as well. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Maloney. Anybody have any questions for the department?
Good afternoon, Jessie Defoe with the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education, and with me is the chair of our public policy, Rob Hill. And knowing that we want to keep your day moving, we did just want to start by setting the stage just a little bit about CTE in Wyoming.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and thank you in particular, Chairman Northrup and Representative Lawley for working with us on this. In our area, students that focus on CTE, they graduated at a 96% rate, and that's been a consistent data point year over year. They go on to college at higher rate than their peers, and then our parents report about a 15% higher satisfaction with their education. In a recent workforce study done here in Wyoming, we found that 60% of our open jobs right now are career and technical education-based occupations. So supporting these grants helps expand students into these high-paying, high-demand jobs in our state.
And so again, thank you for your look at this. We appreciate the partnership with the Wyoming Department of Education as well to still look for efficiencies, because we think that those are there, and ways to help teachers as they're not grant writers. They're busy doing programs in their classrooms. But with this new legislation, what we appreciate is the accountability of the 2-year look back. So as it was indicated, the districts who are catching on have an opportunity to apply for this. And then also the understanding of the inflationary costs of just what these programs take to do. The up to $75,000 is really helpful. The other thing I would know is that this does not change the appropriated amount. So we're not asking for any more or less within the budget. It's just increasing the grant threshold itself. So this was not change any money currently allocated towards this grant program. And so with that, if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Anybody in committee have any questions for Ms. Defoe or Mr. Hill?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Chairman Scott.
my understanding is that this grant program is not part of the model for funding, so won't be dealt with in recalibration. So as if inflationary pressures persist long enough, we'll probably have to increase the appropriation from this to keep up with that. But we're not at the point yet where we need to do that. Is that right?
That's correct. And Mr. Chairman, Senator Scott, no, we feel like right now we're going to work within our means, but just make it doable for the educators how we can within what you've so generously already provided.
Very good. Further questions from the committee? Anybody? Thank you very much for your presentation. Anybody else, public comment? Anybody else? Anybody online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else, public comment? All right. We'll close public comment and go to the bill. What is your pleasure on the bill?
Move to pass.
Second.
Moved by Chairman Scott, seconded by.
Move introduction.
Moved, yes. Moved by Chairman Scott, seconded by Representative Lawley. Committee, do you have any questions, comments, anything? All right, we'll move to vote. Please call a roll on 25 LSO 0365.
Mr. Chairman, on 25 LSO 365, Career Technical Education Equipment Grants Amendments. Senator Beitman?
Aye.
Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz is excused. Representative Allred?
Aye.
Representative Andrew?
Aye.
Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Clausen is excused. Representative Lawley?
Aye.
Representative Obermuller?
Aye.
Representative Provenza?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Scott?
Aye.
Chairman Northrup?
Aye,
12 aye, 2 excused.
that bill has passed committee. Okay, go ahead. Representative Lawley.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we took a vote, or if we need to take a vote on 0098, which the recommendation was to lay aside. So would we need a vote or no?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we need to. Nobody's moved it. So
Okay, perfect.
I
Thank
think
you.
we'll just let it sleep quietly.
Let us sleep quietly.
Let it sit. That's good. But I'd like to.
Okay, we are at item number 7, which is the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board. We're going to get an update from Ms. Janine Bayteski and Dickie Shaner, if you would. Thanks, Rob.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Janine Bayteski, and I am the Chair of the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board. And next to me, I'm proud to introduce you to our new Executive Director, John Waller. John just joined us, and I can't be more pleased. John comes to us with 34 years of education experience and many years as a principal, so he will certainly be a big help as we're addressing compliance issues and all kinds of stuff. So please welcome John. First, I wanted to give you a brief update as to where we've been since we met with you at your last meeting. Since we've met with you, I think I brought you up to speed then that we had received 2 charter applications, of which we had the opportunity, due to a budget amendment brought forward by Senator Dockstader, to approve one of those. It was a lot of work, I have to tell you. You know, going through a 450-page application is really trying, and it's emotional as well, because you're looking at all the work that these folks put into it, and you're finding flaws in it, and you're thinking, you don't want to break their spirit, but we also want to make sure that whatever we approve is the best for the students in the state of Wyoming, and we're not letting things just slide by. So saying that, we approved the charter school in Alpine, Wyoming. We are presently in the process of so the process is, after you approve the application, you then develop a contract between the Charter School Authorizing Board and the board of that charter school. So we are in that process, and we have 90 days with which to complete that contract. So we're real pleased to bring them on, and hopefully we'll get things worked out and get them up and running. The targeted opening date for that school will be the 26-27 school year. So also, when we met last, I took you through some of the recommendations that the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board would like to put in front of you. And I think you have a memo from me that explains those. The first, of course, was to establish and support autonomy of the board. And, as I mentioned then, it's important that the board is not viewed as either being part of the Wyoming Department of Education or part of the governor's office, but an autonomous entity similar to what the State Board of Education is. And we'll continue to work through that. The second one is to clean up previous legislation that limits charter school access to some of the block grant funding in some categories. For example, transportation isolation payment, teacher extra duty pay, and then there's the old famous central office materials, supplies, and personnel. Now, I'll be very honest with you, and I'm sure Deputy Shaner will agree with me, the materials and supplies is an easy one. The personnel one is a bit more challenging. And Trent Carroll put together a memo that I think is also as part of your package that outlines what that really looks like in terms of their ADM and what the resultant numbers would be to that. And, you know, it's interesting because I think we need to really reflect on this, because I think we've all learned something as a result of where we've just come from, is that when we wrote some of the state statutes, we never envisioned that there would be a separate entity from a school district that authorized these charters. And so there's just cleanup work that needs to happen, and this is just one piece of it. There's other pieces I'm sure that we need to go through as well, but we need to go through these statutes and make sure that things that come out in those statutes that are district-specific, that address charter schools, need to be looked at and make sure that we want to really keep them as district-specific, or if we want to just address them as charter schools, so that we can be inclusive and fair to all of the schools moving forward. So, Dickie, did you want to talk about the Trent's memo at all?
Thank you, Chairman Teske. Mr. Chairman, we did submit a memo just laying out a lot of tables and numbers associated with these state authorized charter schools, and would be happy to try to answer any questions related to that if there are any.
Is there questions from the committee on the memo about all the numbers and facts? Dated October 1, 24. It appears not.
Okay.
Good job.
Any questions of me?
So as you're working through this and you're seeing these recommended changes, or is somebody going to be bringing a bill, or how do you plan to proceed from here?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay. That'll work. So they'll see that during the session, right? Okay. Bringing a bill during, okay.
It's just really important, you know, like, if you think about it, and you know, I think back to when we were double funding these charter schools. And I thought, what are we doing? This is crazy. But now that I sit in a different chair and I look at this and I think this isn't crazy, because here we have these schools that are starting up. They're starting up with 0 reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And we have categories, for example, special education, transportation, which are reimbursable expenses. And I think you're going to hear from Christian Winger from Prairie View Charter School about some of the catches that happen as a result of this, and the inability to really offer a good transportation plan as a result of not having this. So, and I think many of you might remember, back several years ago, there was this, we were having an issue with some of the small schools, small districts in particular, whereby they'd get one student, one special ed student, that was an extremely high-need student, and it would drain the reserves of that district. And so there was a pot of money that was set aside for these school districts to pull from until their reimbursement payment came in, at which point they would reimburse the pot. And I think that might be something we really want to think about moving forward, so that these districts really have the ability to offer the students a full range of an education, including transportation. So.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for the presentation, and welcome, John.
Thank you so much.
Was anybody from Prairie View School going to speak on it? We could call it public comment if you'd like. Yes, we'll do that right now.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Christian Winger. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Prairie View in Chugwater. And just really want to reiterate my support for what Chairman Teskey just mentioned. We're in our second year of operation, so we successfully navigated our first year. And in our first year, we did not run a transportation program. We had to focus primarily on making sure we had enough funds to run our special education program, which is incredibly hard to try to forecast as a brand new school. We don't know what students we're going to get registering for the school. We don't know what IEPs are going to be. We can't pre-screen for that in the beginning. So it's really not until after school starts that you're going to figure out what we have from a special education standpoint. So it made it very difficult from a budgetary standpoint. Now, we did make it through that first year. And so we do have some reimbursable funds coming back this year for our special education. But we experienced about a 65% growth in enrollment between our first year and our second year. And so right now, our special education program is probably going to cost us 3, maybe 4 times as what it did last year. And this year, we're also have started our transportation program. So we're running 4 buses, 4 routes. And there again, it's incredibly hard to try to forecast what's this going to cost. We're very fortunate to be able to work with Wyoming Department of Education, and we were able to get some used buses from other districts through essentially a cashless transaction. But these buses are 19 years old, and unfortunately, one of them needed an engine, and so we're down a bus there. So we're kind of playing the games to try to get those buses up and running and make sure they meet all the state standards and DOT regulations and do that. But it's very difficult for us to say, okay, how do we buy a new bus? Or how do we start to replace these when we don't have any reserve funds or any startup funds? So it's interesting to look at districts who maybe don't have any major changes in their special education or in their transportation program from year to year. Those districts kind of have a self-sustaining program, where for us, again, we just don't have those funds to start up with. So if I can make it through my first maybe 2 or 3 years, then I should start seeing that come back every year, and it will help carry that. But it's when people say that the first 2 or 3 years is the hardest on a charter school, they're not lying. And that's one of our big concerns. So again, I just really support that we would look at that and try to come up with a solution for that. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm sorry, can I get your first name again?
Christian.
Christian, sorry. Christian, just out of curiosity, you're chartered through the state authorized school board, correct? So going through that process as opposed to going through the process of going through your local school district would have alleviated that. My question is, we have created a nuanced nightmare, in my opinion. I've watched it from the very beginning. Why would we continue down this road of the state authorized charter board as opposed to just saying, school districts and charter boards, y'all need to get along, and we can eliminate this bureaucracy of trying to figure out how do we split this out and this out and this out? So can you explain to me and maybe to the committee why we didn't just have you guys go through, and maybe your story in particular, why you didn't go through the local school board?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Representative Brown. So that's an interesting question. The reality is that if we didn't have the opportunity to go the state chartered route, I don't think we would exist today. So it provided an opportunity for us to start what we built. When we first started, we met with Platte County School District number 1 and proposed to them the idea of us starting a charter school in Chugwater, and they were, at that particular time, they had a different board, a different superintendent, but they were adamantly against it. And so we started our path with them. And then they recommended, and obviously we had the opportunity to go to the state authorized route when that didn't pan out.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Chairman Scott.
Chairman, just basic information. How many students do you have now currently? What percent of them are from Chugwater and its immediate environs, the Chugwater community? And are you drawing any from Wheatland?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman Scott. So yeah, we have 96 students right now in the school. And I'm not 100% sure what the exact figures are, but we do have students coming from Platte County in that Wheatland area. We have some students coming from Goshen County, and then we have some students coming from Laramie County. So we're running buses in all three directions. As far as the exact numbers, I don't know that.
You know, Mr. Chairman, Senator Scott, I think what has surfaced here, as Christian has talked about his growth in the last year, is, we all know that we've had homeschooled students. And we've all known that the quality of the education they get is varied all over the map. And so what's happened is, Christian, what was the percentage of your students the new students you picked up? Wasn't it like 40% of them were homeschooled students? So this is providing an opportunity for those students for a need we didn't know existed.
What percent of the Chugwater community is actually going to the charter school as opposed to the school district?
Mr. Chairman, probably 98%, somewhere in there. We do have a couple of kids that live in Chugwater that ride the bus to Wheatland. And then we have kids obviously coming from Wheatland to Chugwater. But I'd say 98% of everybody that lives in Chugwater goes to the charter school.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Has your school taken the YTOP yet? And have those scores been posted? Because I was looking at our YTOP scores and I don't see Prairie View, so I'm assuming this coming year is the year you take them?
They did take them, yeah.
They did take them?
Yeah. So I'm not sure.
Were they not posted? I
They
guess the
have been
department-
posted, but I'm not sure where.
I didn't see them on our sheet, and I didn't know why they're not posted there. Is there? I was just,
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
so just make sure, is it part of the school?
question came up, and there's some new and small that we did, and I'm not sure with Chugwater specifically that they have enough students so that you would see anything. You have to have a certain number, or they don't report because you violate privacy.
There's school districts that are smaller than that.
Yeah, we have districts.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Berger, the memo you received is a district-level analysis. Recall, these are schools. The analysis you received is a district-level analysis.
Yeah, I just
There is
found
an
it.
individual school analysis, like somewhere on the departments.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for purposes of reporting, the Department of Education has
Excluded the state-authorized charter schools from the district scores, and they report them separately from the district. I'll shoot you the department's assessment links, and you can peruse those at your leisure.
And Mr. Chairman, just to, I don't want to seem like I'm sympathizing with you, but I kind of am. I remember a kid going through school system in Emerson, Wyoming during the 80s when the state was taking our money from the boom. We went from building schools and having plenty of money to not having money. And it was some low end times. And in fact, I believe there's a teacher in this room that was teaching during that time and frozen salaries for over 10 years at least. And those are hard times, and starting up is hard times. I get it, but it's hard to justify to those schools who went through those times to say, hey, all of a sudden we're going to give these charters all this money, wondering well, why aren't they using the public schools? And maybe the public schools were failing for wherever those communities were or whatever it was. But that's just the nature of starting up. And I think that's the nature of starting up with even small businesses. I mean, if you start a restaurant, you're not going to get paid until 5 years in. You just got to buck up, you know, it stinks. Hopefully we all can beg, borrow, and steal and help each other out with buses and whatever we can, so old uniforms or whatever, to help succeed, you know. So we might have to go through that, but anyways, but we've all gone through it, and it was tough. I remember as a kid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Always good to see you, Janine. First of all, I wanted to kind of direct a question that related to Representative Berger's comment. Charter schools are public schools.
Yes, they are.
In Wyoming by statute.
Yes.
Okay, that's important, I think. But I want to make sure I understood in your recommendations, it wasn't so much what was written, but what you said, that your view of maybe the best solution or simplest solution to the convergence of what happens if you're a district created versus a state authorizing created, the best solution to that is to simply take out, once it's created, any distinctions with district versus state charter, and once they're created, they're all treated the same from that point on. Did I get that right, or sort of right?
That's perhaps what I said, Mr. Chairman, Representative Lawley, that's perhaps what I said, but what I meant was that we need to make sure that as we're going through that distinction in legislation, that we aren't penalizing the state-authorized charter schools and depriving them of things that only come through a district. Does that put clarity around it?
Yes, that the clarity on the fact that it shouldn't matter after creation which way they were created, they should be treated the same.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the topic of, not having the startup funds, I mean, we just started a rural school in Albany County School District 1 in northern Albany County, and we didn't get the money on the front end either. So I guess you're asking for special treatment by saying we need the money up front when our school district's has to upload that cash that we don't have. We're having to make budget cuts. So I guess that's my concern with this, and I don't know if you're aware of when we start up a school as public schools that we also have that problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Prozenza, I'm very aware of that. But what you have is a district to count on. They have no one. They are a standalone entity with no district reserves, no district to help them through the process. I'm very aware of the startup cost of starting a new school. And you're right. And I'm aware of the school, and I'm glad for those kiddos that live out there that they finally got a school. But I don't think we're treating them with special treatment. I think we're just providing them with the same resources we provide the rest of our students with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been working on the statewide charter process for 3 or 4 years now. I think we passed the first bill 3 years ago. And a lot of the debate at the time was related to the cost of new charters. And so the first bill draft was structured in a way that, in fact, I believe it was 75% of ADM was going to a new statewide charter so that it could be demonstrated as a cost savings endeavor. And that was how and why it passed the legislature. This is going to save the state a tremendous amount of money. We can operate charter schools for much cheaper than we can operate a public school. So that bill passed. As we discussed it, there was discussion about that being wildly unconstitutional because it was wildly unconstitutional. And so we came back the next year and fixed that, made it constitutional again. And then we saw, well, there's going to be tremendous startup costs because we double pay as we should. And So the legislature came back and eliminated the double payment so that new charter schools would not appear to cost more. But they do, as you're experiencing. You know, what I'm understanding from your testimony, which is not in any way surprising, is it actually costs money to start a school. And the challenge that we have here is the challenge of equity versus cost, and a realization that we need to treat all of these kids just as well as we treat all of the rest of the kids, because they are all public school kids. So every one of them needs access to transportation and special education. We appreciate that testimony. But at some point, we need to come to the realization that it's not free. And so I appreciate your testimony because it's real. It's the world. It's how it actually operates. We don't get to start a new school for free, and that school is an additional cost, and we need to be thoughtful of that as we're moving the policy forward. The disappointing aspect is that you are caught in between a debate that needed the policy to simultaneously appear to be free and be equitable, and that can't happen. So, you know, I'm sorry that you're in the position you are because your kids are having to have some hardship that they shouldn't have as a result of that. So we probably do need to find a solution. And, you know, I'd invite you to work with us, and Janine always works with us. Janine's been here longer than I have. And so I appreciate that, Janine, but to be thoughtful about what we can do to fix that. I know we'll see bills that relate to charter schools, but I want to ask both of you to make sure those are pragmatic, that it's not just trying to make everything appear to work. It actually needs to work, and that might cost some money. So that's my ask of both of you, is to stay involved and make sure that as we're working legislation in the future, that we're simultaneously treating these kids equitably, but we're doing it with real data, real information, and that we're not trying to sugarcoat policy that isn't necessarily going to work. So thank you both for your presentation.
Mr. Chair, Senator Rothfuss, so just to be perfectly clear, when I suggest having this pot of money, that pot of money is a loan, so to speak, because it would be they would replenish that when they get the reimbursement monies back.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up on that?
Yes, go ahead.
But it isn't really, because the way the state works is on a cash flow basis. So the only thing that really matters is how much cash are we out at any given time. So even though from an actual balance sheet, it looks like it'll be paid back, it rolls into a perpetual future and we're never paid back. It's the same thing with the transportation we work right now, which only works because it's a chicken and egg type situation. We've always been doing it that way, so it works just fine. We don't have to double book it. But the first time we make it right, we're double booking it. And that's why it was on the books to begin with. It wasn't an accident that the charter school statutes from however many years ago double funded it up front. It was a thoughtful analysis of the fact that it was going to cost these additional expenses, and you needed the capacity to have transportation budgeted, special education budgeted, and not just those things, some other things. So it was a thoughtful policy. We pretended it didn't exist and we axed it. It would be great if it was eventually going to be paid back, but there's no way. You shouldn't receive enough income to ever pay it back, or you're not spending enough money on your kids and it's inequitable.
Okay, anybody else have any further questions, comments? We appreciate both of you showing up and giving us an update on how charter schools are progressing. Anybody else want to comment on charter schools? Public comment. Going once. It is public comment. Public comment going twice. Okay, we'll close public comment. That's right.
It's your last turn.
It's good. It's all good. We're on number 10, item number 10, which unbelievably is the last one on the agenda. University of Wyoming Lab School. We're going to listen and hear what Albany County School District and University of Wyoming have to say. First, we'll start with Dr. John Goldhart, Superintendent, and Beth Baer, Board of Trustees Chair for Albany 1, Randy Wilkerson, Chief of Operations, and Albany 1. Please introduce yourselves as when everybody gets settled in.
Good afternoon. My name is John Goldhart, Superintendent of Albany County, number 1.
Yep, wait a minute until we get the doors closed.
Okay.
and-
I'll put it right up to my mouth. John Goldhart, Superintendent, Albany County, District number 1.
Welcome, John.
Good afternoon. Beth Baer, Chair of the Albany County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees.
Randy Wilkson, Chief Operations Officer.
Welcome. Welcome to education. So take it away.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Albany County School District Number 1. I'd like to just start with a statement, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. The UW Lab School became an Albany County School District Number 1 school in 1999. Prior to this, it had been a private school on the university campus, which charged tuition for students to attend. It is our understanding that this change was made in 1999 due to financial considerations to allow the school to continue to operate without charging tuition for students to attend. Since then, it has been a district school operated as a choice school, whereby parents can apply to a lottery system to enroll their students. The school currently operates as a K-8 school operated by ACSD number 1 and housed in the College of Education facility at the University of Wyoming. The school has a dual mission to educate students in a student-centered model and to provide a training ground for pre-service educators. Enrollment has fluctuated from a high of 247 students in the 2020-2021 school year to a current enrollment of 162, which includes 113 students in K-5 and 49 students in grades 6 through 8. Since the 2020-21 school year, 199 student teachers have been placed in ACSD number 1 schools. The UW Lab School has had 59 of those placements over that time, followed by Laramie High School with 28, Laramie Middle School with 22, and Spring Creek and Slade Elementary both with 22. The most number of student teachers at the Lab School was 18 in the 21-22 school year, and the fewest is the current school year with 1 student teacher placement. The district and university have several partnerships outside the Lab School, which we intend to continue and expand upon in the future. Current partnerships include the University School Partnership with the College of Education, the High Altitude Partnership with the Guidance and Counseling Program, World Language in support of our Dual Language Immersion Program, facility use for Laramie High School indoor track, and partnerships with the Psychology Department, School of Speech and Language Pathology, Master of Social Work Program, School Counseling Program, School of Kinesiology, and the School of Nursing. The Lab School Partnership has operated under a series of MOUs, with the most recent one ending in 2023. Since spring of 2023, ACSD and UW worked consistently on a new MOU to operate the school into the future, ultimately reconciling challenges regarding maintenance, safety, and curriculum in the spring of 2024. This June, the university notified ACSD number 1 of their intent to only enter into a 1-year MOU, ending the lab school on UW's campus in June 2025. The district asked for a 2-year MOU in July of 2024 and was returned the signed MOU by UW for only 1 year in late July 2024. In August 2024, the ACSD number 1 Board of Trustees approved this 1-year MOU with the hope of continued conversations with UW surrounding the long-term future of the school on the campus. It is our understanding that as of today, the position of UW is that the UW Board of Trustees has made their final decision on this, and that the school will not operate on campus past this current school year. Although regrettable, the district ultimately accepts this decision by UW, as we have no choice but to move forward and plan for the future. As such, we have engaged in 3 facilitated listening sessions with our Albany County community to hear the needs and wants of our community pertaining to a school of choice. We intend to discuss those listening sessions and possibilities moving forward at our meetings in December. It is our intent to make a decision regarding the lab school's future as soon as possible for the sake of our students, families, and educators. Additionally, while we understand the importance of the lab school in preparing our future educators of this state, we are equipped to continue that work with pre-service teachers in our district at all of our schools. While we appreciate the concern and attention of our legislators on this issue, we view this as a matter of local control, with a decision to move or close a school resting with our locally elected school board, not with our legislature. Our community has elected us and entrusted us with these decisions, and we do so with input from our community and with the best interest of all students and educators at heart. We have serious concerns over a legislative mandate requiring a continued partnership between ACSD number 1 and UW for the operation of the lab school, and do not agree with the precedent that sets for public schools in our county or the state. While we appreciate the attempts by many to find a solution to this issue, our locally elected board has already started the process of resolving this, and we ask that we be allowed to do so outside of legislative mandates or oversight. This is in keeping with the way we currently operate all schools in our district and with the duties and power entrusted to our board by the voters of Albany County. Thank you for your time and dedication to the education of all students in Wyoming, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Go ahead, Chairman Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I've always viewed this as a local issue in Albany County between the community and the university, and one of, I suppose, many that are between the community and university. And trying to figure out, is there any state influence or interest in what goes on? Assuming the lab school closes, is the district going to have to come to the state for any new school facilities monies for new facilities, or are your existing facilities adequate to handle the students?
Go ahead, sir.
Chairman Randy Wilson here. If we absorb lab school into our K-5, we will still be at a 71% capacity in the 4 schools that we have open at this time. What it would take is Laramie Middle School to right at 100% capacity if we added the students there. That capacity at lab school, although 20 years ago would still be 200 more people than what we'll have in it at this time, it would be at 100% of the adjusted capacity.
And Mr. Chairman, so with the middle school, are you able to make some adjustments to the capacity and get by, or are you going to be coming to us saying, oh gee, we lost this facility at the university and we need money?
Or in the school.
Chairman, the lab school has other issues other than the capacity of it right now, which has come in front of the School Facilities Commission. But we do have 4 modulars there also to use that was brought in, like I said, 20 years ago to house those other students. I don't see us coming forward because of a capacity issue to have a new school. Okay. There are other issues with that school that may have us coming forward.
No, Mr. Chairman, I guess part of the, what you have in front of you in your materials is a letter from the entire Albany County delegation. And part of the concerns that we had in that, when we talk about Chairman Scott's concerns about like what's the state's vested issue, and part of it was the capacity with the schools and no time to essentially react to what the university's decision was to end where the lab school currently is housed. So the process that we have in place through school facilities, Chairman Brown can maybe give us more background, or Senator Rothfuss, but if the legislature decided to build a school right now, it would still take us 3 to 5 years. And so if we run into an issue with the lab schools, middle school students having to be shifted into our public schools with capacity issues and then funding issues that we're seeing because there is litigation because we're not funding education adequately. This just presents further problems for the legislature. The other issue that came up about why this matters to the state is because historically this school, it's been here for over 100 years. Historically, the school has provided a job training program for teachers across the state. And we're at an all-time low of people who are applying to be teachers and having a pipeline. So I just give Chairman Scott some background on what the purpose of our letter was and why we thought that there's potentially concern to the state of Wyoming if there is not some sort of an intervention in this process.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And, on that point, and Randy, maybe you know the answer to this, what is the additional funding cost to the state of Wyoming for moving these students out of the university lab school space into any district space? I mean, at a minimum, the major maintenance seems like it's an additional $250,000 a year, but I haven't seen any calculations on what the rest of the student implications would be. Do you have a sense of that?
Chairman, I don't see any additional cost to the state. There wasn't any additional cost to the state when we moved Vital to Spring Creek. I would overall see a cost savings to our district in the amount of staff that may be needed. I'll let Dr. Goldhart or Chairman Bear expand on that.
When Vital and Spring Creek were consolidated, it was, we had an overall savings to the district, not just for personnel, but also for facilities costs.
Mr. Chairman, quick follow-up.
Please go ahead.
So every one of those students generates an ADM on a per student basis that is associated with major maintenance. Those students that are at the university do not generate those ADMs. So you have, I believe, 162 students that would be moving over that would generate a major maintenance ADM at a minimum. What's the value of that?
Tristan, do you know? Okay. We don't have that information right now.
Okay. And a suggestion that there would be savings, I guess I need a little more analysis on how there would be savings if you were moving these students over, because are you suggesting that we'll actually have savings from the standpoint of the state's perspective or from the district's perspective? Because, and this comes down to a conversation that I think we've all had, right? There's different perspectives. From the district's perspective, I understand that it does not cost you any more money. It can save you money from the district. Makes perfect sense. And this is one of the issues why the state has some say, because it's a state funding model. From our perspective, at a minimum from the major maintenance standpoint, it's an increased bottom line to the school foundation program. But I feel like with this discussion, whether it's from the university or from the district, I feel like this is exactly the kind of thing that should have been calculated. How do we not know the differential? I mean, if the legislature is not supposed to be getting involved, if the district is handling this, I guess I feel like we should know what the change in cost is going to be at the state level. So maybe a little more background. We've been talking about this for over a year. What are the differences in cost?
That's all right. Mr. Chair, Senator Tristan Green, Chief Financial Officer for Albany County School District. The reason that we don't have those numbers at this time is because although it may appear that we have had to talk about this for a whole year, we have not. Like, we just had our community listening sessions. So it is now time for us to start taking the community wishes and putting those numbers to paper and start looking at all of our options. That's when our numbers will come about. We don't have them today, but we will starting in December once we start talking about all of our options. And you are correct, it is a savings to the district. It will generate more major maintenance funding that we don't currently have.
One more follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and then let the rest of the committee. Getting back to the original interest in having multiple years, I'd like a little more context on that. I know that the district puts together a facilities plan, and you typically plan things a little more ahead than 1 year. which if you take the date of the MOU and the idea that the university is saying we'll end the MOU at this point in time, you've got a 1-year runway. You mentioned that you tried for 2 years. What do you see as kind of being the minimum amount of time for an effective planning and strategy to minimize the impact on the students in the district?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm not sure I could answer that straightforward. I mean, we've been in positions where we've consolidated 2 schools just last year, and we were able to do that in a matter of about 6 months. I do think it's important to just reiterate a few things. The district is not looking at this to save money. That has never been a priority for us when we talk about what our next steps are at the lab school, and I think that's really important to point out. The other thing that's important, and like Ms. Green indicated, we don't have a final decision yet because we're involving our community, and that's what we're asking you to do today, is to allow us to continue that process. And so that's the reason we can't tell you that we're taking all of the students from the lab school and moving them to other district schools, or that we're going to move the school to a new facility, because we haven't made those decisions yet, because we haven't had those conversations as a board. So I just wanted to kind of point out those things. So I don't know, I mean, ideally, we'd like at least a year for planning. And if we don't have that, we'll make it work. We've always done that, and we did that in the last year.
And that's the reason we requested when the MOU, when the news came to us last June, to have 2 years at least instead of 1 year, because of the need for planning. It's hard to put a brand new school together in a month or two. You know, it takes some real planning and deep work.
Go ahead, Senator Roberts.
If we do choose to take legislative action, I guess what I want to understand is whether the district wants to be involved in a resulting lab school if we continue it, or if the district, and what I'm hearing from you is that perhaps the district would rather not be involved in that school, and for us to have it isolated so that it's not a district concern any longer, and the district can plan in isolation from it, which is certainly something we could consider. That wasn't necessarily something we considered, but based on this discussion, perhaps that would be more favorable. So I do want to understand what the interest would be if the legislature does take action to continue a UW lab school, whether the district would like to continue as part of the partnership in that, or whether we should effectively isolate it to the university if we continue in that path.
We would want to be involved with that, but we do need direction from the College of Education and from the Department of Education, because one of the major sticking points with the lab school has been the issue of independence, where I don't think an MOU is necessary to be innovative or to do things that are good for children. The issue that we have is that our state, the state we all represent, has standards of learning. And to me, those standards are what's non-negotiable. And since I've been here, there's been pushback on that, of those standards, but I don't have a problem with the innovation at all. I welcome it. But if we're to continue the partnership, I can't, in my duty as a superintendent, ignore that our state standards are not taught.
I think I'd just like to reiterate that our district has had no eyes on potential legislation. And so that's really hard to answer when we don't know what that legislation might say or might obligate us to. I think we, by the very fact that we asked for a 2-year MOU, we've shown an interest in continuing that partnership. And that's something our entire board of 9 members would need to vote on. It's not something I'm willing to speak for our entire board on today, especially given I don't know what that legislation would look like.
Anybody else? Go ahead. Senator Biden.
Thanks. I'm not from your area, so I'm reading about all this, trying to get my head around what's going on. But so, pardon my naivete on this, but I just want to know where you guys are at. What's your position? Do you want a lab school or not? That's number one. Just point blank. And if you do, what does it look like? I mean, in order to be a lab school and function, you have to have, you know, in a traditional sense of the word, you have to have innovation and let them try different things. And then obviously the parents that send their kids there want that type of education. So yes or no, do you want it? And number two, what does it look like in your eyes?
Mr. Chairman, that's not a yes or no question for us right now because we're a board of 9 members who haven't had the opportunity to talk with our community as much as we'd like to about it. So part of what we were doing is talking about whether we're going to continue with a choice school, whether it be on the campus or not. We solicited feedback. We're looking at that feedback. We're engaging our community to see if we want to move the lab school to a new location, if we want to dissolve the lab school and put those students into other schools. So I don't think me as the chairperson, I can't answer that question for you because we're a board of 9 members who all might think differently about that. So I really hesitate to tell you a yes or no. What I can tell you is our intent is to try to make a decision by January for our students and for our educators. And what we're asking today is for the ability to do this locally because that's what we've been elected to do with the schools in our district.
And regarding a lab school, I'm an advocate of a real robust lab school model. I spent 7 years of my career in teacher education and higher education. And one of the issues too that's been difficult is as enrollment at the University of Wyoming has decreased and funding issues have come forward, there's been a lot of cuts in the College of Education with faculty. And for a lab school to really do what it's supposed to do and to do the robust research, to look at the current practices, to practice those practices, to collect action data on it so that we can replicate it where it works, you really need at least one full-time faculty member in the Department of Teacher Education whose sole job is working with the laboratory school to be the one to spearhead that work and the research and taking what we're finding in the data to the classroom. And unfortunately, at this point in time, they have not had that type of faculty to do so. And that makes it difficult. It's a tough situation because a lab school can do a lot of good because you can get the research as well as provide a model for all to see what can work in a classroom with kids. The issue is having all those resources to make it work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess instead of talking about what you want or don't want in the future, did you want the MOU to end so that you had 1 year to move the lab, to have to make these community decisions? Was the position of the Albany County School District to have the lab school removed from the University of Wyoming's campus?
Mr. Chairman, no, it was not. Our intent was to continue with the MOU. I think it used to be on a 5-year basis, and that was our intent into the future. As of May of this year, we had no intention of making that change.
Chairman, yeah, we started working this MOU in 2023. There was really 3 things that were issues in this. Number one was like Dr. Goldhart talked about on what the school actually has for curriculum. I don't think that, like he said, should have probably been in the MOU. The other 2 things was an issue with how we repair the school. One of the things that we didn't like in there was having to do all the floor coverings, wall and window coverings, glass screens, doors, windows, unless they're damaged by our people. I understand then we would have to cover them, but it comes down to how funding works and what I could spend on major maintenance because I'm only given a small amount into general maintenance, and these kind of items take our money up really fast. I will say, the University of Wyoming has never charged us for these things. We worked well together, but we didn't want it in there because that would be affecting our budget if for some reason at some point we would have to pay for those items. The other item was some safety and security issues that the University of Wyoming identified, and we were willing to work through those there. I would say the biggest thing was how we were going to take care of major maintenance issues that was causing us issues on this MOU for over a year and a half.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for being here. I was disheartened a little with seeing where the lab school's going. I mean, that's again where I can speak for my family, where we spent a lot of hours observing, training, volunteering, and that's how you become a teacher. That's where I found out I wanted to be a special ed teacher. Pretty cool environment for me. You can go there whenever you want. It was convenient. But my question is to the district, because I really appreciate what the district did for me as well in Albany. The city of Laramie provided my wife and I an opportunity to work in the school after school program. Is that still there with the rec center? It was the SAC program, it was called. We were involved in that. And also we were involved in recess monitors and lunch monitors. I don't know, does the district still hire students to be recess monitors? That's where I learned my behavior management skills, by the way, without using corporal punishment. So I'm thankful for both, that those opportunities were there to become, and my family is too. There's several of us, I can tell where we're at. We're all across the state. A lot of colleagues work there. So we were all disheartened that maybe this is going to go away. I'm sad that the university, that people aren't going into education and they're not utilizing that awesome opportunity. That's where people found out where they wanted to be teachers. And I'm saddened that people don't want to be teachers right now. It's hard. It's not easy. Why would you want to become a teacher? We wanted to be teachers when in there. But so I guess my question now is it sounds like who funds it? Is it a state issue? Is it Albany County? That's what we're trying to find out. Is it the university? Who wants to, or do we want to do that anymore? And that's where I want to go. Can we provide other opportunities for people to get into the teaching realm or get into education? Are those opportunities still there? And it sounds like they are, but just how do we attract more teachers?
Right. We, as a district, I've made it very clear to the College of Education, I'm 100% in favor and supportive of practicum teachers coming into our buildings, student teachers coming into our buildings. We even started something new with them where I think it's level 3 practicum students can be substitute teachers for us, which is a great way for them to learn about real classrooms. So we can get more involvement there. Dean Shim of the college has been incredible. She wants to reach out. She's reaching out throughout the state, and we have a great relationship with her. We are committed to doing that still, Representative Berger, to support future teachers. I can't with a good conscience knowing I don't care where they end up, but I have to be committed as a professional in this profession to have the future there. The corn seed, I guess you could call it, the future beautiful trees. We have to. And we want to also start looking at more ways we can, and even our high schools, of doing programs to get teachers to look at, or students to look at becoming teachers. And that's something we really want to do. We have to. Like you, I'm sad about fewer going into the profession.
So as I gathered from the conversation so far, that a 2-year memorandum would be beneficial, but 5 would be the best. Is that what I heard?
Chairman, 5 is, I think, what we had that expired in 2023, and that we had been operating on that. And so that was I think our assumption, or I'll just speak for the board's assumption going forward is that we would renew the MOU like we always have. When it became an option for a year, we asked for 2 as sort of a time to figure out what we do in between, with the hope that we could continue those discussions. So where we sit today, since it sounds as though the university has made their decision, we are just focused on moving forward and working with our community in whatever way that looks like. We're really interested in hearing from our community about what they want, whether they want a choice school in our community or a lab school, or whether they don't, is really important to us. So that's the process that we're currently undergoing. And again, our ask today is to let us to continue that process.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, the part that's hard is knowing the decision, because staffing for us starts next month and in January. And if this becomes legislative, that probably won't be done until March, April. So for us, knowing earlier is better because it helps us plan for the future. And I think also about the current faculty at the lab school who are very anxious, and I don't blame them, because I can't give them an answer yet of what will happen to them next year, and I don't want to prolong that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, sharing the perspective of your county delegation, part of why we got involved in this process and what we're trying to do is to bring something so that we can get back to where you were before with the MOU, where we've got people that are pulling their kids out of the school, as you know, because they don't have a certain future. And we have an invested interest as a state and also as representatives of constituents that have reached out en masse about this issue, right? And so while I hear like the local control concern, and I'm sympathetic to it, part of my concern is that if we don't intervene, then where we're going is just no lab school. Or at least one that's off campus and looks radically different. And to our constituents, that's not acceptable to them. And so I think, and throughout this process of meeting with stakeholders on both sides, I think that folks have said to us, we would like to go back to what we had. But there hasn't been, and I don't know, I'm not going to place blame on whether it's the school district or the University of Wyoming, but there hasn't been the come together moment to say, okay, it's in the best interest of this community if we keep the lab school here. So while I'm sympathetic to the local control, I don't want to overstep my bounds as a legislator. And I represent you. I mean, you're in my county. But if we do nothing, and this program that's been around for over 100 years is gone, and we can't get back to the MOU that we had before, I don't know what else I'm left with, other than to say, okay, we got a couple months. I guess we can get it done. I mean, I hope you can, if that's what we end up doing. But I don't understand the resistance to, okay, legislature, help take us to where we were 5 years ago. If that's all we did, if we didn't do anything else and we just took you back to the MOU that you had agreed upon.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a different discussion. So our understanding is that this discussion was about legislative mandate. And without knowing what that says, that's really concerning for us. Because just as an example, last year we consolidated Vital and Spring Creek Elementary. And if we had needed legislative approval to do that, that would have been a completely different situation. And so really our concern as a board is that this is a public county school that should rest with us. We've been elected by our county to make decisions for our school district, whether people agree with them or not on all sides of the issue. And so really that's the concern, is it was never presented to us as that we're working on a 5-year MOU. It was, we're going to mandate this, and I don't know what that says. And so that's really concerning, to have no say in potential legislation that could really dictate a lot of things that we might not be able to do. So I think that's where our concern is, and that's why we're asking repeatedly to just let us work through our local process. And while I understand we represent the same people, and we're hearing on both sides as well. And so I think that, again, is our ask, is just to let us work through that process. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I think what we've sort of said all along is, if we need help, we'll come ask for it if we need some intervention. And I don't know that we're there yet because we don't know what our community has told us.
Thank you. Yeah, and I understand the frustration. I mean, the only way we can intervene is with legislation, basically, other than what we've done, which is force people to talk to us. But, and I also understand the frustration that you haven't been given a copy of it, mainly because it's a difficult process to go through with LSO. So it's not, we're not trying to be opaque, and we're not trying to leave you out of it. It's just, we don't have one yet. And at the time that we have one, you'll be the first to know. But the intention, at least with my conversation with my colleagues from this county, is just that we would like to help the lab school get to where it was, because I think it served a great purpose for our community without placing further burden on anyone.
See Wyoming come up, and we'll have a conversation with them.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mike Smith, with the University Vice President of Government Affairs and Community Engagement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kermit Brown, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University of Wyoming.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bill Nye. I'm Vice President for Campus Operations for the university.
Very nice to have you guys here. Appreciate your coming over the hill to talk to us about the University of Wyoming Lab School. With that, I guess I'll let you take off with it and head down the direction you want. As you understand, there'll be questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will begin, but we're going to have substantial input from Mr. Nye, I'm sure. Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to appear today. And isn't it a great room? I still reflect on this. I kind of miss the old days, stuffed in a room upstairs, but I'll get over it. The UW Lab School was started in 1914, and there's a great, it's probably boring and you probably don't want to read it, but if you ever want to read something about the history of education in Wyoming, Chief Justice Golden, when he was Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, wrote an opinion in Washakie 2, and he told me it took him a year to write it. And he went clear back into territorial government to try to figure out what the opinion and the attitude of the state of Wyoming was about education. And it's clear from that research that he did that clear back in territorial days, and it never changed, our state is committed to education. And so there's a lot, I could go on and on about that, I don't want to, but I just want to make that point and say when this school was started in 1914, the purpose of the school, the population of Wyoming was minimal at that time, and the purpose of this school was to provide a place for ranch kids to come and get an education, because we simply didn't have schools all over the state. And I'll get to it in a minute. It's interesting. It continued in that vein until about 1941. And at that point, we had enough schools in the state that ranch kids didn't really have to come to Laramie because there was no alternative. There were alternatives, and at that point, this school switched from being a school of last resort for kids in the state to being a teaching school. And it's interesting, in 1941, the population of the state was 250,000, about a third of what it is today. So it continued as a teaching laboratory up until sometime in the 2000s. The problem is that school has just now become another school in the Albany County School District system. It's not really a laboratory anymore. We don't need it for teaching. We have the internet. We have all, and incidentally, Justice Golden wrote in that Because you may remember, Mr. Chairman, that's what kicked off the building boom. And I asked him after he wrote that opinion, I went to first grade with him. I asked him one time, I said, what's it going to cost us to build all the schools that you talk about in this opinion? And he said, maybe $1 billion. And at that point, we were dead broke. It was just beyond comprehension. Then we got the COLEAS bonus money and we started pouring it in. And I think we built about $2.5 billion worth of schools now. So it's changed. And part of his opinion was, if a kid in 10 sleep wants to take French, you ought to be able to take French. You got the internet. What's it for? And that's never been fully implemented, but that was the concept. And it's being implemented more and more today. So there are more and more teaching methods. Transportation is different than it used to be. We can put student teachers all over the state. They can get the education that they need to be teachers, and they can teach in schools and not just in Laramie. Because as we all know, Laramie isn't necessarily like the rest of the state. And maybe it'd be a good idea if some of our student teachers really taught out in the part of the state where they're likely to go after they graduate. I'm going to leave it to Vice President Mai to discuss the negotiations on the MOU. I think you've had a little bit of a distorted description of that, and I'll leave it to him. The other point I want to make, Mr. Chairman, is there have been a number of incidents in this school since it just became another school. And we have all kinds of legal constraints that prohibit us from discussing those. However, if it were the committee's inclination to go into an executive session, then we could discuss some incidents that have happened with that lab school that might be an influence. Now we have the added complexity of the dorms that we're building next door. They're conjoined with this school. And that, we feel, is not a really good idea. We're going to have 900 and some students in there. We're going to have all kinds of things going on, and you have this lab school right next to it. That is another complexity that has entered into the picture. And security is paramount. And and I'll have Vice President Mai talk about the security studies that were done. The last one that we had about what it would take to make sufficient security in this school, according to, comparable, I think, to, for instance, Slade School that we just built where the old high school was $20 million, and that was in 2020. So given inflation, given what we're eating in the dorms, we've had to come back and beg the legislature for all this money to finish the dorms. I'd say probably that 20 million's probably doubled. It's probably $40 million now to put it up to the level of security that it ought to be. That MOU that's in effect expires the end of the year, and the school will be closed. Albany County School District's closing other schools, and you heard about that. One of them could be used to provide the same services. This lab school is no longer needed for the reasons that I gave. Now, with respect to the short time, I'll let Vice President Mai enhance that, but this has been going on for some time. It's not like we pulled the trigger on them in 6 or 8 months or a year. It's been going on for quite some time. And anybody that was paying attention could feel the ground shaking all around them. So there's been adequate notice. It's not a surprise. I've already talked about teacher training. As far as the additional funding, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's an ADM major maintenance and there's an ADM payment. And I think the school district gets the ADM payment for those students, maybe not the ADM major maintenance, but the university's been providing the major maintenance. And I think we charged them $2,500 and we did like $125,000 worth of work. And frankly, I feel the noose tightening around the university, and the university is going to have to get efficient, and we're going to have to trim some costs. I can feel it coming. I feel the ground shaking all around me. And so this is not part of the core mission of the university anymore. It's not needed. It's not a surprise. It comes to an end the end of the year. The school district can handle it. They've got all kinds of tools. If they need help from the university, they know they're going to need it, are going to get it if they need help from the College of Education. But it's time for it to stop. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to yield the Vice President Mai to talk especially about the negotiations on the MOU and the construction and major maintenance issues that are ongoing between the university and the school district.
Go ahead, Vice President Mai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not really sure where to begin here. It's a pretty complex can of worms. There's a couple of things I think might be useful to the committee to understand. The university used to run the lab school, and up until about, I believe it was about 2000, and about 25 years ago, we'll call it, it became an Albany County School District school and was funded through the funding model. So just to be clear, when it really was functioning fully as a full functioning lab school, it was run by the university. The curriculum was determined by the university, and all of the teachers and you know what would have been the administration of the lab school was all funded by the university. It was all run by the university and specifically the College of Education. So again, that all changed in about 2000. With regard to major maintenance is a bit of a, I'll say, and I don't mean this in a flippant way, but it's a bit of a red herring in this case. So I do want the committee to understand that the university has sunk in the neighborhood of about $5 million into specific projects for the lab school itself since I got to the university about 11 or 12 years ago. The majority of that has had to do with what I would consider life, health, safety issues. We've replaced windows to keep the building a little warmer and a little more climate controllable, which, by the way, is a challenge because that building, understand, is 75 years old. That whole building is 75 years old. So it's heated. It doesn't really have any cooling. Those were the old days when we had glaciers. It's heated off of a central system, so you know it's currently a steam heat. Eventually, it'll probably be converted to hot water heat, given that we have the new hot water and chilled water plant in the area. Eventually, that will be converted, but right now it's a steam heated building, which presents its own challenges for climate control. But probably more important than that, and part of the reason why you as a legislature funded a most cost-effective remedy solution, which I think Chairman Brown was referring to here recently with his $20 and $40 million figures. That MCER found that there's too much mixed use in the building. So we have some College of Education offices in there. We have some College of Education functions in the building. We've done what we can from a security standpoint, I will say. The university has sunk a fair amount of its money into that building to increase the levels of security for those students. When I got there, I wish I had pictures to show you, but when I got there, the lab school was still suffering from the 1970s. In the 1970s, a whole bunch of walls were cut out of that building. They went with this, you guys may remember it, but I do not. They went with this sort of open school experiment that they were trying. And so we had all kinds of kids in classrooms that had no walls or half walls, no doors, no windows. And given sort of what had been happening nationally, that was one of our top priorities, was to get the walls rebuilt, get the doors up, get the doors to where they could lock. And we did that. We actually had kindergartens that the classes were separated by walls instead of accordion folders. That was done probably 13, 14, 15 in that time frame. From that point on, we started to focus on some of the other security things we could do ourselves, and our university police department started applying and probably hounding some of the state agencies for some of the Homeland Security funding for cameras and recorders and that sort of thing. So I think we've kind of exhausted that. And I think what you find in that MCER is that really now this is a matter of how do you get the building to a single point of access? How do you eliminate some of that mixed use? And how do you basically ensure that those kids have the same level of safety as what's spelled out in your 2000, if I'm remembering right, 2015, I think was your most recent update on school security recommendations. How do we get it to that? And I think that's what the MCER attempted to do. So I think historically, the university had a really cooperative arrangement with the school district in that the principal was in constant contact with the dean's office and with various department heads in the College of Education. And I think there's been an awful lot of turnover on everybody's parts, whether it's the district, the university, whatever it is. And I think maybe that communication hasn't been as good in recent years. Part of what Chairman Brown was referring to were a couple of incidents that caused us a great deal of concern at the university for those kids' safety, but also for our faculty, students, staff safety. It involved a few lab school kids. They could have presented a real problem in certain circumstances. As Chairman Brown says, if you want to get into details, we probably ought to go into exec session for that. But without regard to that, I think where the breakdowns in the MOU discussion came up, why I say the major maintenance is a bit of a red herring issue is the only change, I want to be clear, the university offered a 5-year MOU to the district in July of 2013, an extension of 5 years. Pardon me, you're correct, Mr. Chairman. Senator Roth is correct, it's 23, not 13. I'm getting old. I've probably been doing this and that too long. But we did, last year we offered the 5-year extension, and the only change that UW was asking for to that MOU was some strengthened security language to say there has to be better communication when there are incidents. It didn't go into the details, but that was all we asked for. And the district came back and asked to change that language. They also asked to change the major maintenance, or they call it major maintenance, we call it routine maintenance. They asked to change the funding of those maintenance costs, which, by the way, they're accurate. We almost never request full reimbursement for any of this. Typical year, $4,000 to $5,000 max. A lot of years, it's far less than that. They wanted to remove that language. We said, our concern is removing that language, we think further diminishes the level of communication and further exacerbates the problems we're potentially, the problems we're having with communication around security issues. That was what started this thing. That discussion went back and forth for many months, and our trustees, I will say, were getting a little impatient with me as far as getting an MOU signed. The last version I got back removed all of that language that had to do with curriculum and what UW's role was in the curriculum. At that point, I started talking to the provost and to the dean of the College of Education, because that's outside of my purview, to say, Is it okay to remove this? Can we have an MOU without this? And that's where the discussion took off along those lines. So there were many facets to this, but I do want the committee to understand that MOU had been presented to the district in July of 2023 with that minor change to the security, which quite frankly, didn't really have any teeth to it. There's nothing we can do to say, if you don't report this, you have 30 days and you have to clear 250 kids off of our campus. That's just simply not going to happen. But it was more of an acknowledgement of, we really need to discuss anytime there's an issue like this about security. The notion about its usefulness to the College of Education and to the university itself then took off on its own discussion path.
Mr. Smith, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think these two gentlemen have covered. I'll pitch in if there are any questions I can contribute to.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
One. Real quick.
All right, if it's quick.
Promise, real quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, there's, not every school district houses student teachers in the district. I know in our district, I keep asking them, why aren't we having students from the University of Wyoming come and student teach? Our district keeps saying there's a fee with that. My question is, how much is that fee? And why can't that fee be maybe waived so that, I mean, it should be waived, I don't know. But why are we charging that fee? Wouldn't that help with more student teachers going around? I mean, if there's no use for the lab school, then schools, these school districts want to have these teachers because they're competing for all these teachers in Laramie, just like the superintendent said, there's only a few teachers because we want them there because there's only so many student teachers, not enough to go around the state of Wyoming. And I get school districts saying, when can we get rid of that fee associated with student teaching?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, my understanding is that fee has been removed. But just because I'm not the dean of the College of Education, I'd like to ask for a day or so to send you all an email just to be 100% sure. But that issue was raised 3 or 4 years ago under a prior dean who kind of near the end of his tenure, I believe, reevaluated that policy, and I don't believe that fee exists, but I will confirm.
Go ahead, Chairman Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's correct, and I think this committee had testimony on that a few years ago. Mr. Chairman, my question is for the university. Am I right in thinking that many of the students that are attending the lab school are the children of faculty members? And is having that school on campus and convenient to the school, is that a important factor as you look at recruiting new faculty members that you want to recruit that do have kids?
Do you know how many kids?
Mr. Chairman, we're not sure collectively between the three of us, we're not sure how many there are. It is true and has always been, well, since 1941 anyway, it has been true that there have been faculty members, children that attend that school. And that's part of the rub, I think, that we're hearing is that this is going to be an inconvenience to them, and and some of them say it was an attractant to come to teach at the University of Wyoming, that a school for their children was on campus. They could bring their kids to school every day. They could have lunch with them. And so, okay, that's fine, but none of the rest of us have that privilege, or very few. I know a friend of mine who went to school in Rollins and walked home for lunch every day, but that is very unusual. None of the rest of us do it anymore. And so it seems to me that it's a perk, and there are some. Now, there are also students from the community that go to that school that have nothing to do with the faculty or with the university, and so then you've got the same commuting problem. But it is true, there are faculty members, children there, and I can't tell you how many.
Go ahead.
It may be a perk, but you're in the business of trying to recruit the best faculty you can. Is having a perk like that, what's that worth to the university as you go recruiting? Is it something you guys hear about a lot of the time or not? Or?
Mr. Chairman, it's not something that we hear about. And I've only heard it anecdotally when the specter of the lab school closing came up. Then all of a sudden this argument came up. And prior to that, it may have been a perk. I have no doubt that maybe it was. I don't know how to quantify it in terms of dollars or attractiveness of the university or whether it helps us recruit people or not, but we do not hear a lot about it.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to your question, Mr. Chairman, I've sat in multiple school board meetings where people have testified on this, and we've had many UW faculty that have said this is one of the reasons they're still here, and what makes the university a competitive program for them to want to work in. So, I mean, anecdotally, still sure, I'd be curious what the numbers are because it is a big driving point for some folks.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. So it was my understanding that your position now is that the lab school doesn't serve your purpose anymore for the university education program, and that the hands-on teaching experience that these teachers are going to get isn't needed, and you can do it online or whatever. I just want to make sure that that's your position, so it helps me help come up with a solution.
Mr. Chairman, it's our position, exactly as you said, Senator Beitman, that the school is no longer needed. We don't need it as a teaching lab. We have other ways, more efficient, and frankly, better ways of educating teachers, and there's not any need for that school. And because of that, this school has progressed from being a teaching lab to just being another school. And if you look at the students that the school district is placing in that school, we can go into executive session if you want the gory details, but when you look at the students that are being placed in that school, it's obvious it's another school in the district. It's not a special teaching lab of some kind anymore.
Go ahead. Oh.
So in the early 2000s, when it became part of the district, was this I guess I'm not understanding exactly why this was part of the district. Was it at that time that the university decided that you guys didn't need a lab school, or what was the reasoning for it to become part of the district in the first place?
Mr. Chairman, I'm speculating here, but it's a scientific speculation. And the scientific speculation is that this was at the time when the school funding model was revamped. And I think there was an awful lot of emphasis placed on equality of access to education. And my guess is that the UW Lab School would have fallen well outside of that.
Rothfuss.
Thanks. So a couple things that I wanted to focus on, and I appreciate we've had opportunities to discuss, and thanks for that time, but the university has raised concerns. In my view, those are all valid concerns. I think I've said, Bill, to you that I think you're right on every concern you have. That the problem that really presents challenges to the community is rather than resolving those concerns, the decision was made to, well, this has become hard. It might have worked 5 years ago just fine, but now it's hard, so let's close the school. Rather than how do we resolve these challenges that are very legitimate, real challenges. So it comes back to then the value to the university, as Trustee Brown was discussing, and whether this is just a public school at the university or whether it's a laboratory school that's serving the purpose that's consistent with what the MOU lays out as these are the objectives of the lab school from the university's perspective. The question I have, there was a little bit of evidence given, this is how many student teachers served at the lab school, and that number in the past was much higher than any other school in the state. And now we see this year, 1. And that's one of the concerns that was raised. But that's obviously a reversible and fixable event. Something, though, that goes to what Trustee Brown's talking about, the idea that we don't need the lab school because there are better ways. I guess I would ask, where's the data for that? Where is the pedagogical analysis that indicates that doing a little bit of work on my laptop and observing a class is better than showing up in person during the school day because you've walked from classroom A in the College of Education into a classroom in the lab school, spent 15 minutes observing in real time, and then you go back and you speak with faculty in the class about what you observed as a sophomore, not as a student teacher, which happened hundreds of times a year, probably thousands of times when you aggregate. 10 years ago. That's the value of the lab school. How do I get that out of my asynchronous remote classwork over the internet, which I can assure you, I've taken online classes and I've taught online classes, and I do not like online classes, so I don't know quite how they're the same. So where's the data that supports the assertion that we're providing an equal or better opportunity for our College of Education students, which is under the purview of this group, to make sure that we have the highest quality education training in the country that we possibly can? How can we be assured that this little swap out, which may cost us a few $100,000, doesn't hurt our educator training with our master teachers in the lab school?
You want me to answer that?
I do.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not qualified to answer that, and you know that.
I do know
It's
that.
way above my pay grade.
We go way back.
You do know that. I will say this, and I wanted to say this, Mr. Chairman, before we quit. We have a great College of Education. Dean Shim is a great dean. The dean before Dean Shim, Dean Thomas, some of you may know, left the College of Education to be the president of a university in New England. She is a great dean. I have to rely on these people all the time. I have deans all over the place. Everybody in the university is smarter than me, and my job is to hire smart people and get out of their way. So that's what I'm trying to do. But I am assured by the faculty and by the powers that be in the College of Education that we are doing, in fact, a better job. And I'm sure you've heard of the Trustees Education Initiative. And we've made all kinds of progress there in terms of how we educate teachers, how we prepare them to go to the classroom, how we prepare them not only to deal with the kids, because that's not all of it anymore. It's the paperwork and the politics and everything. And we lose so many of these young teachers the first 2 or 3 years. It's just amazing, the attrition rate. And that's what the Trustees Education Initiative is trying to address. And so the one thing I can say to you, Senator Rothfuss, is I think we're doing a better job than we were 5 years and 10 years ago. And I can't tell you, I can't pin it down to pedagogical data. I can't throw anything like that at you. But I can tell you anecdotally, coming from the dean and from the faculty of the Education College, that we are getting it done and that our attrition rate is decreasing.
And Mr. Chairman, Trustee Brown, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with prior education deans as well as Dean Shim. And in the past, the UW Lab School was a core facility within the college. It was a big part of everything that was done. It was one of those pillars that supported the educational mission. So Dean Thomas and prior, for as long as I've been in the legislature. At this point in time with Dean Shim is not here. I wish Dean Shim were here to ask, but I'll just speak for my interactions. Nothing about my engagement on the lab school issue has suggested that the College of Education was advocating for closure of the UW Lab School. I'll just say that. If there were members of the College of Education here that could say, no, we do it a lot better now, I think that would be potentially compelling, and particularly if they were feeling very free to say their mind. Speaking freely, on their own behalf, exactly what they felt, that would be compelling. But those folks are not here right now. And I guess I have some concerns there, based on other conversations that I've had, that maybe there isn't an overwhelming support for closing it within the current College of Education either. And I don't know, who you've had an opportunity to talk with, but I guess I would once again ask, and it may take some follow-up, could you have some of those faculty members send me the data and analysis, recent studies, journal publications that point to the evidence that the processes they're using now are superior to the real experiential learning, which is the priority of the university right now, right? One of the pillars of the university's teacher training and training is experiential learning. So I'm going to need to understand how the alternatives are better than direct firsthand experiential learning. So could I get you to send that information to me perhaps over the next few days?
Mr. Chairman, I will go back and talk to the dean. I'll tell you this, the reason Dean Shim is not here today is that she did not want to deal with this political atmosphere. That's why I'm appearing and she's not. She is not opposed to anything that I've presented to this committee today. And I don't know what the depth of pedagogical data is. I will make an inquiry, but I think you already know what you're asking. So I will make an inquiry to the dean and encourage her to provide it to you. It's the best I can do.
Senator Brennan, you had a question?
Yeah. Kind of to dovetail, I think Senator Rothfuss has done a good job in a lot of ways of addressing my concerns where we say we can use a computer and a tablet to show teachers how to teach. I've got concerns, and I would also be interested in where the data is on that. And since nursing and teaching gets compared all the time, I'm going to compare them because I'm a nurse. And if you sit me in nursing school in front of a computer and tell me this is how you run this machine, let's take a balloon pump, for example, that goes into the heart. And you're just gonna sit me in front of a computer and teach me how to run a balloon pump? No, I need to get my hands onto that. And is not our children's minds just as important as the heart? Don't we want our teachers in the schools experiencing the environment, experiencing the atmosphere? I'm very concerned that we're saying that we can teach teachers on the internet and we don't need these classrooms as accessible for the teachers. And that's what I'm hearing.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think we've strayed a long ways from what we came in here to talk about.
That's exactly right.
And we're not arguing the merits of teaching on the computer. We're not teaching on the computer. We're teaching in the classroom. We're teaching in classrooms all over the state of Wyoming. Those students are getting the experiences in the classroom. And as far as that goes, they can get those experiences in classrooms in the city of Laramie. They don't have to be 50 steps off of Prexy's pasture in order to be able to have that experience. So I would just submit, Mr. Chairman, we strayed way away. I don't want to debate online learning versus in-person learning, although I've come to learn a lot about that in many contexts in the university. And I would probably agree that online learning is not as effective as in-person learning. We're committed to that. So I don't know where we're going here, but that's really irrelevant to what, in my mind, to what we're talking about.
I'll let Chairman Scott go, and then I was going to go to public comment, so.
Mr. Chairman, I would say I've talked to the dean some, and I think that Mr. Brown is representing her attitude 100% correct. And the concern is getting the teaching opportunities around the whole state. And that's what she's looking for. And that's, I think, education, teaching educators has come a lot closer to how we teach nurses and doctors. And I think it's improved it considerably.
Chairman Scott, that's exactly what I heard, was that it's far better for the student teachers to get out and go to Gillette or Powell or Cody and have a chance to get away from the university and find out what life really is.
It's not all student teaching.
Mr. Chairman, may I just, I'd be remiss if I didn't, I'm looking at our notes that we've prepared, and there's one glaring thing that I just want to match the comments from the school district about moving forward. We've had a long, productive partnership with that district. We're both right there in Laramie, you know, and that's going to continue. This is one issue that we're working through. But we honor and respect that relationship as much as they do, and look forward to moving forward with them as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to public comment, please. Please remember to state your name.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Fonseca. I am here to talk to you about a school that is near and dear to my heart, truly. The UW Lab School, my alma mater, is a time-honored institution and a pillar of the Laramie educational ecosystem. People go out of their way to enroll their children. Despite being loved and supported by the vast majority of people in Albany County for several generations, the regrettable, devastating decision was made to close the school. This was done by administrators for administrators, with no substantial involvement from the people who will have to live with the consequences. The discussions that led to this outcome were alarmingly opaque. Most of them happened in executive sessions or otherwise out of the public eye, and nobody who was not invited to participate had a chance to be heard. Our students were not able to share how the lab school's innovative methods allow them to thrive there when they fail at other schools. Our parents could not speak about how their children have gone from hating school to being enthusiastic about life and learning. Our alumni, like me, were not allowed to offer insight into how our lab school education set us up for success in a way many of our peers were not. And most critically, our teachers were unable to present their research and disprove with sound evidence the claim that we are no longer a laboratory school. This lack of engagement with the lab school community has resulted in a dire breakdown in communication. To highlight this, our parents and staff were not made aware of any concerns regarding student behavior serious enough for UW faculty to suggest the involvement of campus police until they were presented as justification for closing our school. The problems preventing the lab school being an on-campus laboratory school are not unsolvable, and we have fought tirelessly for multiple years for an opportunity to fix them. But our ideas, proposals, and evidence have consistently been rejected by a process built from the ground up to exclude and silence us. This is unjust and inexcusable, which is the reason legislative intervention in favor of keeping the lab school on the University of Wyoming campus separate and independent from the Albany County School District is an absolute necessity. A key role of state legislators is stepping in to ensure the needs of the people they represent are being met when local officials are unable to do so themselves. And this is a textbook example of such a case. Your constituents have been wronged in a highly traumatic manner, and we urge you to do your part in making the situation right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ashley Anderson. I have 2 bio and 3 bonus children who all had the privilege to experience the lab school. I have been the lab school's parent group president since 2020. I am not a teacher, and I am not an administrator. I'm a parent. I'm the type of parent who interviewed pediatricians before my first was born. I'm the type of parent who believes that the school our children attend will influence the humans that they will become. I'm the type of parent that toured multiple elementary schools, and I'm the type of parent who cried the morning I received the call that my daughter was offered a kindergarten spot at the lab school. With a very small exception, all of the families at lab entered a lottery and elected for their children to attend. Families do not accidentally attend the lab school. We are families open to alternative learning and encourage outside-the-box, hands-on, and collaborative learning. 9 years ago, I didn't know what integrated learning was or how it would shape my children's future, but I knew that we were lucky. I hope you understand that this school is not a have to go to. It was a privilege to be a part of. From my perspective, the University of Wyoming Lab School was a place of curiosity and exploration. My 3rd grade son ran into a beloved middle school math teacher and told him he could not wait to be in his math class. This teacher said, "Join us tomorrow during your recess." And for the next 3 weeks, my son went to 8th grade math and learned pre-algebra. Without a doubt, a high for his 3rd grade year and something that he will never forget. My family had 3 middle schoolers at the same time. They were all working on different aspects of the Geo Inquiry Summit, or I refer to it as the Bison Project. Some of you may have actually been interviewed by my daughter and her classmates. Being at the dinner table was a magical experience as a parent. 5th, 6th, and 8th graders talking together, asking each other questions, and talking about their research. This was not a conversation of, "My project is cooler than yours." It was inquisitive with a desire to learn more. But the best part was a few months later. A national news program that we had just stumbled across was covering the bison story. Key individuals that my kids met and interviewed were on TV. The joy and pride that my kids expressed was so genuine. That was their project. It was their research, and they did the same interviews. This was more than a school project. It was a project in citizenship. I understand that the school has changed with the change of leadership, and it no longer lives up to a lab school. But please make no mistake, that is not because the parents do not want a lab school. We want learning opportunities that collaborate between all learning levels. We want projects to captivate our children, and we want to light a fire in their little hearts and minds. A lab school is not for everyone, and that is okay. But please do not be mistaken, there is a need and there is a want from the parents for a true lab school. Laramie does not need another ACSD-1 school on the campus of the University of Wyoming. Laramie and the state of Wyoming need a lab school full of innovation in partnership with the University of Wyoming. Thank you for your time and investing your interest in the future of our children.
Ashley?
My name is Jennifer Maizo. I was a lab school teacher for 22 years. I have 3 degrees from the University of Wyoming, my bachelor's, master's, and PhD. I was the 2016 Albany County School District Teacher of the Year and the UW College of Education Outstanding Graduate Student also in 2016. People often say that true education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. It's a powerful quote, but how often does it actually happen? My name is Jennifer Maizo, and I'm proud to say that for many of my 22 years as a teacher at the UW Lab School, I was surrounded by people who truly embraced and lived this idea. We didn't always agree, but we were collectively committed to providing hands-on, student-centered learning experiences that honored the whole child and cultivated a love of learning. Some of us even did action research on unique aspects of our curriculum, such as arts integration, civic education, place-based education, service learning, and co-teaching strategies, and have presented our work sometimes alongside our students for national and international audiences. At times, it was quite challenging to balance our dual mission as part of a public school system and teacher education program situated on a university campus. Our approach was not perfect by any means, but we found ways to work within this structure that were very beneficial to the university, pre-service teachers who ultimately had a statewide reach, and our local school district. Before COVID, our school had thousands of sign-ins from college students each year. And I want to stop and just say that we're talking about observations and visits and practicum experiences and day-to-day interactions with students in addition to the semester-long student teaching experiences. Our principal led frequent learning walks through the school with these students and their instructors. Afterwards, they would discuss instructional practices they observed, noting things that they might incorporate in their future classrooms and things that they might do differently. As a lab school teacher, it was expected that you would have a student teacher every year and lots of practicum students, sometimes more than one in your class at a time. Regarding our benefit to ACSD1, our students are frequently recognized for their academic success. When they move on to LHS, they typically do very well. Just last year, 6 lab school students displayed their National History Day projects in Washington, D.C. as part of the national level competition, and 2 lab school students won a national contest for their artwork, answering the question, "What does America mean to you?" It's also worth mentioning that last year, 4 of only 100 prestigious UW trustee scholarships given statewide went to former lab school students, and 9 former lab school students were selected for the All-State or the All-Northwest Choir, an ensemble comprised of the best singers from a 5-state region. This is incredible, especially considering that the lab school students comprise less than 10% of the population at LHS. It is no secret that ACSD1 has moved more and more towards a system-centered versus a more individualized site-based educational approach. What I've come to accept over time is that there really is no room for a laboratory school within the current framework, because a laboratory school by nature needs much more freedom and flexibility to do things differently. I listened to a school board presentation last night that broke down our district's state assessment data. The in-depth analysis and interpretation of the data was impressive, and the presentation was well organized and well articulated. But at the end, my biggest takeaway was that our standardized assessment results look very similar to other districts around the state and haven't changed that much over time. As a system, we are doing okay, but there is plenty of room for growth. I didn't see any evidence that suggests that our move towards district-wide implementation of standardized curriculum materials and instructional delivery systems is leading us towards significantly higher levels of student achievement. In addition to these quantitative indicators of student achievement, which tend to characterize students as data points on a graph, I'd like to hear more about levels of student engagement and teacher satisfaction with models that are currently in place. How are the students experiencing the curriculum? Is it relevant and meaningful to their lives? Do they like school? Where is the joy? What do teachers think about the curriculum materials that have been chosen? What other approaches should we consider? Are there models working elsewhere that we should be looking at? What would happen if teachers had more flexibility to change and adapt the adopted materials? What would happen if our instructional facilitators, many of whom are master teachers, co-taught alongside struggling teachers? These are all questions that, if answered, could strengthen our education system not only in Albany County, but across the entire state. And these are questions that can be answered through a laboratory school model. Gabe Selting, Georgetown law graduate and United States diplomat. Cordelia Zars, founder and director of her own theater company in Boulder, Colorado. Marcos Johnson Noya, junior at Harvard University, majoring in computer science, statistics, and physics. Allie Breyer, teacher at a trilingual school in Spain. Laura Sherrod, professional jazz singer and recording artist. Adrian Johnson, creator of crossword puzzles for the New York Times. Isaac Hayward, emergency room doctor in Sheridan. These young adults, my former students, and many others who I'm very proud of, have gone on to experience professional success in very different fields. Something that connects them is that I believe that they would each say that their fire was lit at the UW Lab School, at least in some part, by teachers who met them where they were, helped them discover their passions and personalized learning experiences to help them gain the knowledge and skills they needed to achieve their goals. The UW Lab School is struggling right now, and there is plenty of blame to go around. I'm not sure if we're currently lighting fires within the students in the ways that I've just mentioned. However, I believe that the coals of the lab school fire are still hot, and you have an opportunity to reignite it, tend to it, and make it stronger than ever before. Thank you.
Go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Miuso, it's been suggested that all of the things that have been done traditionally at the lab school could just be done at another school in the district. We could just drive teachers there for training and education, or across the state or elsewhere. Can you provide a little bit of your thoughts on that and what the difference is between just another school in the district or around the state and the lab school, how that behavior is differentiated?
Yes, I can. I do think that it is very different. First of all, the proximity is important. Like I said, it's not just a student teaching experience. I do think it is important for student teachers to get out across the state and experience different situations, but the invaluable experience, or it's invaluable to have the experience of being able to walk down the hall and have an experience with children. You cannot replicate having that. And I would like to say that even right before COVID, when things kind of shut down with the in-person visits, we had students from the university, College of Education, in our classrooms all the time, learning walks, observing, working one-on-one with students. And I will say that something that they can get at the UW Lab School in the way that it used to function is student teachers were actually curriculum builders right alongside their mentor teachers. And that is such an important skill to have. Even if you're going to go out into a situation where you're given a curriculum and you have to implement it, which is happening in places across our state and across our nation right now, having the skills to critically think about what is in the curriculum and build a curriculum that meets the needs of the students that are in front of you, and having the opportunity to co-write that with mentor teachers who have many years of experience in the classroom is invaluable. I had the opportunity to do that during my experiences as a student teacher, and I can't even say how much that influenced my development as a teacher and the teacher that I've become today. It's so important, and it cannot be replicated online, or even taking the students to different places. I just don't see that a way that experience can be replicated.
Just a quick question, thank you, and sounds like my experience. Why is not that happening anymore? Why did we go away from that?
I don't know.
Why? You know?
I don't know, and I will say that today I heard something said about the curriculum flexibility. We used to work in collaboration between the university and the professors of the classes in the College of Education, and also implementing school district resources and putting them together to create curriculum that met the needs of the pre-service teachers and also the K through 8th grade students in our classroom. And I was very surprised to hear that that language was taken out of the MOU and that that was maybe one of the issues, because I have never heard that said publicly until today.
Thank you. Please state your name.
My name is Tammy Heiss. I'm parent of children who have attended the lab school and also a UW faculty member. I am one of those people who stay at UW because of the lab school to a great extent. I chose that school for my children because that kind of individual learning-based experience was so important to me. Recently, my oldest daughter moved to the high school. Her experience at lab is different because she started when she was first starting school and had this very strong experience, the kind of experience that we say was like lab in the ideal form. Lab has changed. There are problems. I would not deny them in any way, but those problems are not insurmountable. My high school age daughter is a stronger researcher, writer, and public speaker than my college students. Her experience at lab has been absolutely formative. My younger daughter, still at lab, absolutely loves learning. She is excited to go to school every day. She tells me what work she plans to accomplish. And then at the end of the day, she tells me exactly what she accomplished, whether that be learning about turkey buzzards or microbiome in China. She has the ability to think and to research and to care that I wish all children had. I heard things today in testimony that I had not heard in public before. And I am disappointed with both the district and the University of Wyoming for not coming together to solve problems for the benefit of the children who attend lab and the students at UW who depend on the lab school, at least they have in the past, to further their own education as future educators. In talking to my own students, some of whom are education majors, they have said again and again, at least in past years, how much it mattered to them that they were able to go to the lab school, to visit with a teacher for 15 minutes, to sit with a class for 30 minutes, to observe on a regular basis as sophomores, juniors, and seniors, even before they got into a classroom with any real responsibility themselves, what they should do, how they should do it, and why they should do the different methods that they were exposed to. I don't want to lose this for myself, for my children, or for anyone else. Thank you very much.
Questions for? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Brooke Fergon, Building Principal, UW Lab School. I can elaborate on any of this. I worked really hard to get this down to under 3 minutes, though, and so I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Good afternoon. My name is Brooke Fergon, and I have served as the building principal at UW Lab for just over a year. I'm here today to address misconceptions and share challenges currently facing our school. Misconception number 1, the lab school no longer serves as a laboratory school. Our school continues currently to maintain strong partnerships that benefit UW, including pre-service teacher participation in performance assessments, practicum teaching, and learning walks, school counselor, nursing, and library science interns, speech, language, and counseling services provided by graduate students. These partnerships highlight our continued role as an educational laboratory, benefiting both lab school and university students. Misconception number 2. From the girl who's there every day. The lab school students pose a security risk to the university. Our students aged 5 to 14 have not posed security threats related to their enrollment at lab. Admission to our school is lottery-based and open to ACSD1 students from all backgrounds, not just faculty children. Behavior challenges are typical in K through 12 schools. That's why everyone can't be a public school teacher. However, we believe that learning to prevent and address behavior concerns is crucial for pre-service teacher training. Misconception number 3, the lab school's curriculum lacks flexibility. Our teachers adapt instructional materials while meeting state standards. We use similar elementary programs as other Albany County schools, but emphasize outdoor learning, project-based learning, and citizenship education, along with many partnerships that we have on campus. The major challenges I see in the day-to-day operations that maybe you haven't heard about today, there are two of them. One of them is facilities. Maintenance and custodial services are substandard compared to other schools, but this is likely due to unclear funding responsibilities and maybe some miscommunication between the university and the school district. This is very fixable. Some areas in our building do lack ADA compliance. There's other challenges with parking and building access that maybe hasn't been prioritized in long-term facilities planning. All of this is fixable. We believe our proximity to campus resources outweighs these challenges with facilities and offers significant benefits for university engagement, as you've heard a lot about already. The second big challenge that I face in the day-to-day operations is supporting the mission of mentorship. Limited access, and again, I've only been there for a year, so I'm speaking just on the testimony of my colleagues and teachers that I've been working with over the past year. However, there was limited access and communication during the pandemic that prevented those pre-service teachers from coming into our building. They weren't, we had to keep our students 6 feet apart. We all remember those days. None of us want to go back. And we were really limited to who was able to access the building and when. So some of those partnerships broke down during that time. During that time, we also had many retirements. There were master teachers who didn't want to teach remotely, that didn't want to have their students spaced out. And so they weren't willing to teach under those conditions and retired. I'll go back to, I'm going off the script here. So we do have a strained relationship with the College of Education since the pandemic. There's been a lot of turnover, both in the College of Ed and in our building. This is fixable. All this takes is more communication and collaboration. I'm new as the leader. Dean Shim is new. We don't know each other well, but as we've gotten to know each other, we've had very cordial and professional communication with one another. Let's see, where did I go? This can all be improved through better communication and collaboration. Instability about our school's future has led to teacher transfers and resignations. So this period of instability has further damaged our ability to fulfill the school's mission because our master teachers, they want a sure thing. They want to be valued. They want stability. They want to know that they're going to be teaching and working in a school that's going to be there next year. Teachers are less likely to invest in initiatives when the school is potentially going to close. So that is a current challenge. As you've heard again today, that we do have more shallow applicant pools. And so this is currently affecting our ability to find experienced mentors. This is why we only have one mentor teacher this year, or one student teacher coming to our building this year. Despite all of this, there is capacity to rebuild this culture of mentorship and research. I urge you to consider how any proposed legislation could impact both UW and ACSD1's teachers and students. Solidifying the MOU will only be a first step. Facilities and staffing issues must be addressed for long-term viability of the school, and any successful future arrangement would need to clearly define each party's commitments, promote collaboration, and honor all school stakeholders. Please ensure any intervention on your part supports both Wyoming's teacher pipeline and the ACSD1 community. Thank you for your support of the UW Lab School and its 137 years of educational excellence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. My name is John Gordon. I am 2024 State Teacher of the Year. I'm not here to debate the validity of the lab school. In my own experience, my first 3 years spending time in classrooms were super important. I needed to know whether or not I could teach, or if I had the constitution, honestly, to teach before I got to my student teaching experience. However, the data presented about the sheer number of student teachers that have been at the lab school for the last while is staggering to me when we have an entire state screaming for student teachers. During roughly the same time period, I've been in Cody for 9 years. We've had 10 or less student teachers from UW. And I've made a career out of innovating and teaching the standards, which I heard that we are innovating without teaching standards. I could be wrong, but we can do that, and we do it all across our state. We have a RIDE program that is committed to innovating across the state. And I would encourage very much a continued pushing out of our student teachers to our communities and learning how to innovate within those other new diverse places so that we are no longer building a monoculture, but building a diverse and robust amount of teachers that are ready for the challenges ahead, because they are many. With that, I'll stand for further questions.
Questions for John? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Meredith McLaughlin. I've been at the lab school since 2001, 24, it's 25 years that it was part of Albany County School District. I'm here today in remembrance of Barb Deschler and Dr. Bob Campbell, two legendary lab school teachers who have passed in the last 2 years and who taught me how to do all the wonderful things that you heard other teachers and parents talk about today. So I'm speaking for them and because of them and to honor their work. I respectfully must correct Trustee Brown on a little bit of the lab school history. The lab school, as a preparatory program, started not in 1914, but in 1887. The first graduate of University of Wyoming was a preparatory student. In 1906, Ruth Adsit started the first summer training program. You can see it in photographs at the American Heritage Center. The Knight children and the Buffum children were in that first class. So actually, it's been a teacher training program since 1906. And Ruth Adsit in 1906 was committed to citizenship education, student leadership, integrated learning, and involving student teachers in the work as co-teachers. I want to also address, I could talk forever about students, but I want to actually talk about my student teachers a little bit. During COVID, I had 5 practicum student teachers in my classroom. 2 years ago, in the fall of 2022, I had the privilege of teaching social studies methods. I had 22 social studies methods students working side by side in a one-on-one mentoring relationships on research projects with 8th grade students at UW Lab School. Just for the record, that process was critiqued by Albany County School District, and I was told I could no longer do it. So I just want to be very clear that some of the efforts for the lab school to serve student teachers were compromised by decisions of Albany County School District. And that hasn't been said, and I feel like it needs to be said because I actually experienced it directly. It used to be that the principal of the laboratory school could place student teachers in the building. At this point, that is no longer the privilege of the principal. That has been given to district admin, and at that point, we saw different kinds of placements happen. So just be aware of that. The other thing I want to talk to you about with student teachers is absolutely student teachers should be placed all over the state. When I have a really wonderful 3,000 level student who's doing a practicum in my room and they want to stay with me in lab school forever and ever, I say, you cannot. You must go out into the state and become a student teacher somewhere else and get a different kind of experience. The lab school serves a very important role, not in the final stage of student teaching, but in the freshman, sophomore, and junior places where, frankly, University of Wyoming students will have to learn remotely if they're going to go out into other districts to get that kind of hands-on nursing level experience. Laboratory school can offer that if given the freedom to do that. So, I'm here to say that I do not think it is practical to consider a University of Wyoming lab school as the sole entity of Albany County School District. The situation that made that very unusual relationship possible 25 years ago are no longer in place. 25 years ago, we did not have the same level of federal regulations that mandated the homogeneity of schools today. 25 years ago, ACSD used site-based management and shared government. And those democratic systems allowed UW Lab School to partner easily with the voices of parents, students, and the university. Today's leadership, as we have all learned, is structured differently to meet different needs of different institutions. Clearly, our leaders in these institutions today do not have the deeply collaborative and pre-existing relationships necessary to overcome challenges of shared space and safety that will naturally occur with a non-UW school of choice on a UW campus. They are the present, but they are not the future, and I would like to talk to you about the future. American public education is in an unprecedented time of both teachers and students fleeing the systems that seem to be failing us. We have left to find autonomy, freedom, and maybe even spaces where teaching and learning can be joyful again. State leaders across the nation are seeking different kinds of models that might more effectively restore education to the public and public to education. Wyoming, too, has their eye on this kind of innovation that is more effective at meeting the needs of their citizens. Closing a laboratory school at a time when we are in desperate need of more choice and new models doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. We just listened to the state charters present on how it's a double cost to start a new school, and we already have one in place that can be reimagined without those startup costs. States around the country are adding laboratory schools by legislative mandate. Florida, Texas, North Carolina, and others all have legislated lab schools whose purpose is this kind of innovative space to reimagine the structure of schooling to be more flexible, more adaptable, and more attractive to new teachers. Such a school in Wyoming cannot be the entity of just one district. It has to belong to the entire state. The institution best suited to house this kind of innovative school is its land grant institution, the University of Wyoming, and the folks who lead it should be selected by the stakeholders, not by one person. I am currently on leave from this beautiful school because I'm trying to figure out how to do something I used to be able to do more freely, to connect education and link it closely to the public. I'm working with museum educators now, state park superintendents, artists, librarians, community historians, elders, and archivists to help young people research the extraordinary stories they want to tell about Wyoming's seemingly ordinary people. One young lady is trying to figure out why her great uncle went to live in a sheep wagon near Bill, Wyoming at age 12. Others are learning how to read cursive as they transcribe the poetry of Mae Preston Slauson, prison chaplain at the Wyoming Territorial Prison. Just last week, we gathered at Ivinson Home for Ladies to learn how beauty routines had to change during World War II. And even though these kids are doing this in their free time, they are learning a lot of standard-based reading, writing, and history, as well as something that's not in the standards, character. Maybe more so than if they were sitting in a classroom reading a textbook written about and by people who are not from here. And I'm thinking that this might be one kind of different way to do school, embedded in the community, working alongside elders on projects that celebrate Wyoming identity. It sure would be nice if they could get some credit for this work as well, such as dual enrollment credit and an early college program. Could they engage in these experiential learning projects alongside university students who can come from the College of Education, but not just the College of Education, maybe other places at the University of Wyoming? And might it actually be impossible to engage K through 12 learners from around the state and this kind of opportunity with today's use of technology? This is one idea of how a laboratory school could try out some different visions of how to do school differently. There are others that perhaps some of you have. I would love to engage in dialogue about what might be possible if the University of Wyoming Laboratory School were freed from the governance of one district in one county and instead given back under shared governance to the state and its land grant institution it originally belonged to. In 1938, Harriet Knight Orr of Orr Hall reported, "It has always been found that the need for this school persisted." Foundational to the state and university in 1887, this school has been transformed and reconfigured many times to adapt to the changing needs of the state. I courageously encourage you to imagine possibilities of how this school could meet new needs in Wyoming's educational future. Thank you.
Hello, Joint Education Committee and Chair. I sent you an email today, and today I urge you to keep the lab school open and on campus at the University of Wyoming. Removing the lab school's presence on the UW campus will have negative impacts on UW personnel, on UW enrollment, and the community of Laramie. I looked at that letter and I thought, how pompous my introduction to you, but I was trying to keep that letter at 3 pages or less because I knew you had so much to review today. I want you to know it's not pompous. I want you to know, as many of us, as a Wyomingite, as a generational Wyomingite and business owner, I wear a lot of hats and I bring a unique perspective, as do all the people in this room and as do you, to the state. As owner of Wyoming's oldest downtown business, founded in 1905, there's a parallel between the lab school and my family business. And so in my letter, I told you that the lab school began in 1905. I have to preface that because the university brought in that educator for summer school that year. So in my mind, it really did start in 1905. The university brought that educator in. That was very forward thinking. So I want to draw your attention also to the fact, and I mentioned it in my letter, I represent hundreds of members, and it is very humbling to me. And those members of my nonprofit here in the state of Wyoming, that's just 4 years old, encouraged me to come today. And I am the founder and executive director of the Albany County Conservancy, which was established in 2020. And I want to address that my family, in their 118 years of business in this state, just humbly in looking at the figures, has contributed more than $100,000 in building property taxes alone, which go directly to the Albany County School District. This isn't unique for the state. There are other small proprietors, I'm sure, that could claim this. My small Wyoming business has paid, over the last 20 years alone, the same amount in sales and use taxes. So those aren't really monies generated by me, they're generated by my clients. Clients who are very supportive of the lab school, clients who are lab school families. It is sole proprietors such as myself, it is Wyoming residents through property taxes for local school systems and small businesses. We keep Wyoming alive. We keep Wyoming open. They're the backbone of our economy. I have personally photographed decades of students in the Albany County School District, as well as surrounding counties. I have personally photographed over 1,000 children at lab school. That means I know these kids. I know their parents. My members are former teachers within the Albany and Laramie County School Districts, former and current UW professors, former LCCC staff and board members, UW alumni, students enrolled at the university currently, and local area businesses. Why am I mentioning this? Because I want to encourage you to notice teacher training. Lab school provides invaluable training to future teachers. Faculty service. Presence on campus means it's easier for faculty to visit with, host, educate teachers and students alike. There are existing relationships that have already been mentioned today. Faculty retention. Lab school is a recruitment and retention tool. Outdoor education. The mission of the outdoor education in lab school means elementary and middle school lab school students grow up to love our state and value the preservation of Wyoming. It facilitates education and practice in Wyoming issues. And I noticed this in particular as I embark upon a mission of advocacy in the state representing my members. Outdoor lab education facilitates long-term solutions as these children are growing up and becoming active members, active voters, leaders in Wyoming communities, not just in Albany County. Town and gown extend statewide. History has provided us real-life examples, and they've been mentioned today. Community, lab doesn't just impact UW students, faculty, and staff. Local families and outside visitors mentioned today to the Laramie community and the wider university community and Wyoming at large are impressed with the model lab school provides the state of Wyoming. To address the necessity of keeping lab school, let's take more recent example of my 15-year-old son, Nicholas, the youngest of our children, and highlight the lab school success. And I'd like to point out that my children were in lab school for 14 contiguous years, so I had a lot of experience in the lab school community. Nicholas attended UW Early Care 3 months to 5 years of age. Staff and administration identified Nick as being warm and excelling in developmental standards for each stage. We became concerned when Nick started to show antisocial tendencies and aggression in preschool class at age 5, facing kindergarten. Nicholas then, unlike his peers, after enrollment in kindergarten at the lab school, was not reading, not writing successfully at grade level, 1st through 4th grade. Lab school's master teacher environment and administration helped to uncover Nicholas without disruption to the classroom at little expense to the district outside of a standard IEP implemented in 5th grade when he was identified as being on the spectrum. While not autistic, Nick presents some of those developmental differences. We realized Nick had great potential when at the young age of 6, he was constantly in the College of Education Library Research Center, located in the lab school and utilized as the school library. Nicholas was bringing home Shakespeare among many other high reading level classics. Nicholas continued to improve with the care and guidance of lab school staff and faculty. He started reading and writing with energy. While his skill was still lacking and his peers began to bully him, the multi-age component of lab assisted my son, and he began to develop great compassion for his peers despite this. Lab school encouraged multi-age learning and group activities, including Nick, even though he needed personal breaks and would work on personal projects in a safe place outside of his standard classroom. Nick's test scoring in the district continued to climb, and we elected to remove Nick's IEP with encouragement from the lab school and Albany County School District staff, facing 7th grade. Nick excelled, and while difficult, with encouragement, he took on leadership roles within his peer group as suggested and supported by lab school staff. Nick has excelled at Laramie High School with an easy transition from middle school. Nick currently participates in extracurricular sports, maintains a GPA of 4.0, and during our recent parent-teacher conference this October, we were informed that Nick is the best student in his math class. If he had retained his IEP, he wouldn't be excelling at Spanish. He has now decided he will learn French, facing a June 2025 trip to France, Belgium, and the Netherlands within the school district. Lab school is responsible for Nick's success. His outcome within the school district would have been far different. Nick would have continued to be on a trajectory for failure, identifying his severe depression, feelings of isolation, and inability to focus or participate in a classroom environment. Not every student fits within a traditional elementary and secondary model within the Albany County School District. His success occurred because of the 5 core values identified today to you eloquently by people better situated to inform you of that. Nick is a positive influence and contributor within the district. Lab school students that benefit from lab school can be a positive trajectory, as can the teachers that are produced in the College of Education at the University of Wyoming. In regard to the letter sent by President Ed Seidel and UW trustee Kermit Brown included in today's materials, I would like to state today that in all my interactions over the past decade and a half as a parent and a working professional on site, both during school in photographing school children and after school hours photographing sports and activities, I have noticed the strongest security measures implemented within the community. Lab school doors are locked regarding all hallways with direct access to classroom and practice areas, not available unless a staff member is present. Issues of maintenance and security already exist throughout the district and the University of Wyoming community at a higher degree with more frequency, and we do not see those offerings or programs closing. This written response makes many ACC members, that's my nonprofit, the Albany County Conservancy, question the ever-present desire for campus expansion. While our members appreciate the UW focus in this regard, we would like to point out that, as other people have pointed out today, these issues can be addressed successfully. Our members are concerned with the current focus on expansion and the blatant disregard for present historically successful programs within the community. We want to encourage the celebration of lab school success moving forward. With the support of our legislative members and you, this committee, and trustees and current administration, we can find a way to save this extremely valuable institutional resource and keep lab school on campus. Wyoming is unique, and this is a unique opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? Thank you. Before the next person presents, does anybody have a opinion that's different from the last 8 presenters?
My opinion is the same.
Is the same, okay. If not, then you are the last one.
Okay.
At which time we'll close public comment.
I do have 2 extra things that I could add to the conversation that I think are relevant. So my name is Jess Wilford. I'm a longtime staff member at campus. I've been at UW for 24 years, 20 of them as a staff member. I have my graduate and undergraduate degrees there. I have a student at UW Lab School. First, I'd like to talk about experiential learning. On October 29th, UW released the next generation of USP requirements, which requires all students to get their their experiential learning piece. I won't talk more about experiential learning for the College of Ed students because we've talked about that quite a bit, but I will ask why we're removing lab school when this USP is being integrated, because every single education student can get their requirement 100 feet away from where they're learning in their classrooms as they're learning in their classrooms. Further, the removal of lab from campus will create unnecessary roadblocks to UW Lab School students' learning. Each of our amazing schools in the Albany County School District provide a unique learning opportunity to their students. Slade Elementary provides dual language, Indian Paintbrush has the GATE program, and on and on. The UW Lab School provides access to the University of Wyoming. Not only do UW Lab School students have opportunities to connect their learning to real-world physical locations at UW, they're also exposed to higher education. UW Lab School students use campus extensively, and yes, that granted access will not be removed if lab leaves campus, but the effortless ability to expand students' learning and the ease of interdisciplinary and project-based learning will become harder. Now, fourth grade students walk to Old Main to learn about turkey vultures. Third graders walk to Geology Museum to learn about topography. Middle schoolers walk to the Makerspace to learn about robotics. All children walk to their library, a university partnership that is an unparalleled resource for children's literacy. All of this goes away if UW Lab School is removed from lab. Again, I do want to reiterate that I do not believe that any of the problems that are presented to lab staying on campus are unsolvable. I believe that they are completely solvable, especially with the ingenuity of the University of Wyoming administration, faculty, staff, parents, even the kids at the lab school all want to save UW Lab and keep lab on campus. Thank you.
Questions for the young man? Thank you. And okay, when I was on school board, I used to give everybody 3 minutes, and I'm gonna start 3 minutes, okay? Go.
So I'm a Wyoming parent. I have 2 children, a third grader and a kindergartner at lab. And we've heard many reasons why lab might be not functioning in the way that it was at a time where everyone agreed it was valuable to the state and to the university. So I just wanted to provide the reasons in the last 3 years why it actually is functioning as a laboratory school, in addition to those that have been mentioned before. So my third grader and my kindergartner have experienced a College of Ed grad student who came into the classroom and pioneered a social emotional learning curriculum that they received books from. We have a middle school math teacher right now who's working with College of Ed students who come into the classroom and actually do design curriculum. Lost its principal of over 18 years, and it's had 2 principals in the last 3 years. ACSD1 got a new superintendent who's only been in office for 2 years, and the College of Education got a new interim dean who only just became permanent this year. That is a tremendous amount of turnover from all of the parties that are affecting how lab runs. And all of that is in the wake of a global pandemic. So there is really no reason to think that any reductions in the true laboratoriness of lab are permanent and will continue. And indeed, you've heard Principal Fergon state she's eager to continue ongoing relationships, to work with the university, to rebuild and develop new ones. And then I also just wanted to highlight that laboratoriness is not the only reason why lab is important. I'm another faculty member, my husband as well, for which we've stayed at the university because our children could walk to our offices after school and be on campus with us. Recruitment for students. I also just wanted to point it out that the university is the flagship university for the state with a land grant mission. And we would expect that the university would have a partnership with a school that trains students, and we'd expect that it would provide a place where students in the state could come and have exposure to higher education, making it more likely that they would go to school at a 4-year institution. So I think lab is an incredibly valuable investment, and I just also wanted to highlight that I do not have confidence in the university and the school district to come to a resolution for all the many community members who have stated that we want the lab school in existence on campus. And so I respectfully urge you all to support legislation to help maintain this institution.
Time.
Thank you.
Time.
I got it in 3 minutes.
Same thing. You get 3 minutes. Go.
My name is Rick Semino. I'm a teacher here in Cheyenne. At the end of my school day, I threw on a jacket and came down. I'm part of the WDE's Level Up program, and a lifetime ago, before there was any white in my beard, I spent practicum hours with Nicole Flynn up in the lab school. I have mentored 3 student teachers in my time here in Cheyenne. When we talk about closing a school, it's an argument of value. What value does that school bring, not just to the community, but to the state? As a mentor teacher, I rely on student teachers to bring new ideas as much as it is that I give them the benefit of my expertise. When we say lab school, that laboratory, quote unquote, isn't the student, that's being tested on. It's the teaching methods. If there's been a mission drift, that's fixable, and I absolutely have faith in Principal Fergan and Dean Shim to do so. But the lab school provides College of Ed students with holistic experiences in freshman, sophomore, and junior years that they do not find in a textbook, that they do not find online, and sadly, that they do not find when they come and see me their senior year. I give them what I have done for years, which frankly I think is pretty good, but they give me what they have seen in those first 3 years. Like Senators Brennan and Rothfuss said, the depth of knowledge from textbooks and online methods simply does not match the personal engagement of seeing, hearing, and participating in new methods that can happen at the lab school. When student teachers share what they experience with mentors across the state, that is the value that we are protecting. Like Representative Berger and others have alluded to, there are dwindling numbers of student teachers that are statewide. That's absolutely a matter that the committee should continue to address. But we need every one of those student teachers to bring their absolute best to schools across the state. That best comes from the UW Lab School. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madalena Robinson. I'm a 9th grader at Laramie High School up in Laramie, and I'm also an alumni of UW Lab School. I attended from kindergarten up until my 8th grade year last year. So through my experiences with the lab school, it undeniably created a learning environment where I was in a position where I could create change. As a Wyoming citizen, as I was first placed in the lab school, as a kindergartner with my small stature of almost 4 feet, I was provided the opportunity to present in front of my classmates, and through collaboration with my teachers, with my parents, and with my fellow students, even just at the age of 5 years old, I was allowed to make my voice heard. I stood on that stage as a kindergartner thinking, every school must be like this, surely, that I would be allowed to have my voice spoken at such a young age, that I would be allowed to open my mouth and have my words heard by the people surrounding me, the people important to me, and even those that are stakeholders in situations. Without the assurance and the support from the UW Lab School, I would not be in this chair today. Through support through Meredith McLaughlin, and Andy Panel, who have continued to allow me opportunities. Just with a simple essay submission last year, the UW Lab School provided me an opportunity to do a mock version of the We the People competition, helping me allowing me to understand my First Amendment rights and allowing me to understand who I am standing as an American citizen. Advocating for the UW Lab School is advocating for American experiences, for advocating for Wyoming history. After following my experience at the lab school, I've continued to work with local historians, interviewing and creating a project in partnership with the Smithsonian to allow myself to make Laramie heard and people within my community. I have worked with a Wyoming territorial prison, and I have continued to read through the documents with their Mace Lawson, a significant part in Wyoming history. The lab school was the cause, and I am its effect. I am the data from that school. I am the effect. I am a future change maker. And without the effects of the lab school, I would have never been in the place I am now, where I feel comfortable to speak in front of change makers like you. Thank you.
Good job. Okay, we will close public comment. Committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
You got 30 seconds.
Yep. In Evanston, Wyoming, our for-profit hospital just got rid of our labor and delivery department. Guess what? We're not getting it back. It's not coming back. We'll never see labor and delivery ever in Evanston. We have to go to Salt Lake, other places. Pretty sad. I implore you guys, locally, UW, I love this school. Come on. What's going on with our teachers? Why aren't we, I just feel like you guys don't want us around. What have we done to you? My whole family spent a lot of time at that lab school, and we're the people today because of it. The kids that we teach are the people today because of that place. Come on, locals, you guys get this. It's an awesome place to be. I loved it. I'm not here anymore. You guys, if we get rid of this school, it's gone. You're not getting it back. Never again. And that's such a Wyoming staple. It's Wyoming history. And there's a lot of great people that love that place. Legacies, when we're gone from here, we're gone, we're forgotten. But our legacies stay by the actions we do in life, by our actions and our policies that we sign off to. Those are the legacies. Those are the lasting moments that stay. Okay? Where's your legacy? What are you going to do with this? It's been amazing. That's where I learned the love to teach. Okay? And we're not saying get rid of charters or nothing. Don't do that. Keep providing as many opportunities as we can for all. Anyways, I'm sorry for the emotion. Part of it is because it's my last day, but it's been wonderful. These are wonderful people. Thank you. Thank you for all of you for your testimony. I didn't know it would be this emotional. Young lady, that was awesome. I want to be your teacher. Yeah, you're a great kid. Anyways, I love you all, and just come on, let's work together. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Representative Berger. All right, anybody have anything to say? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We don't have a committee action on this today, but I hope that I can get the support of this committee in potentially trying to bring solutions for this. It's no small feat to get an entire Albany County delegation on a letter together to support something. So I hope that we can see support in trying to solve problems together in the next legislative session. So thank you for your time today and for hearing out my community.
Thank you. I believe we are adjourned. Oh, Bo? Oh, I'm sorry. I looked to the.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, this has been a lot to soak in, obviously. To me, being an outsider, hearing all this is pretty interesting, and appreciate the Albany County delegation coming together on this. We have to have a laboratory school in Wyoming one way or the other, and if UW doesn't want it and Albany County School District doesn't want it, well, let's have a state-run charter school and we'll get somebody in that wants to do it, whether it's Shadron or whether it's another college, and they can run it. But we need one, and I'm committed to helping you guys make that happen, and let's get to work. Thank you.
Topic. Mr. Chairman, I think there are at least 4 members, are there not, for whom this is the last meeting? And you, and the Berger,
Lane.
and
Jerry.
I just wanted to say on behalf of all the rest of the committee, it's been a pleasure working with you. We appreciate your service. We know we may see one or more of you back here again sometime in the future, but since this is your last meeting under your current election, I want to say thank you to all of you for your service, to your help. Appreciate it.
Thank you.